attachments, the photos that were sent to us via email. Will we have those to look at tonight at the meeting?
I should have checked on that. I do not know. I'm hoping we will.
At least like on the screen.
Good evening, all. Thank you for coming. Happy holidays. I call to order the December meeting of the St. Augustine Beach Commission. Vice Mayor, if you will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Beverly, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor England,
Here.
Vice Mayor Koska,
Here.
Commissioner George,
Here.
Commissioner Rumla,
Here.
and Commissioner Zamora.
Here.
Before we begin, a special acknowledgement to Commissioner George for her birthday today. Congratulations. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
All right, approval of the minutes from the November 9th commission meeting. I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All right, all in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Corrections? Being none, the minutes from the November 9th meeting is approved. Max, our city manager, please, do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
Well, we have an addition which is in front of you on the dais. Adjustment to the FY21 budget. There's a budget ordinance and a millage ordinance, and I provided 5 suggested steps in my memo to you, that at 7 p.m. you will discontinue the regular meeting temporarily and go into a special meeting so these ordinances can be dealt with. And the finance director will explain to you the need for them and why they've come up. There's nothing alarming about them. They're simply a correction that the Department of Revenue is requiring us to do. Her memo is in front of you as well before ordinance 20-10 and 20-21, and she can explain it, as I said. Other than that, that's the only addition. We will have one deletion, which is the mobile food sales. We don't have that ordinance yet, so we'd ask that you consider that for your next meeting. That's agenda item number 5. So delete that, and that's all the changes I have.
Any questions from the commissioners? Any further additions or deletions from commissioners? Okay, all right, then we'll get started with any changes to the orders of topics.
Not for me, no.
Okay, all right. We'll get started with our presentations, and we have a very important one at first. This presentation is for our Vice Mayor in recognition of your service, your loyalty, your independence to this commission, and thank you very much.
Now, you want to come down, or the commission want to come down, and I think it'd be appropriate, because I need to get some photos,
Okay,
or if you would go out there, so you could be all together to present the plaque to the Vice Mayor. No, stand here because it's...
Yeah, unfortunately, we're not going to get the seal in the background, but. That would be a good idea.
accept this plaque as a recognition of your service to this city. It has been a pleasure serving with you as the vice mayor and as our timekeeper. Well, thank you. It's been an honor and a privilege to serve the community and the city. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Hang it. Let's see, next item on the agenda is consideration and interview of Mr. Nicholas Binder as a candidate for junior alternate to the Code Enforcement Board. Mr. Binder, thank you so much.
Your last name is pronounced Binder.
Bender, okay.
Yep. And the first name has an H in it, Nicholas.
I see. All right. Apologize. Getting started, thank you again so much for, and you have been quite frequently here and offering assistance and advice and to the city. We appreciate that very much. And your application, your willingness to volunteer for the Code Enforcement Board, it's just wonderful to have someone of your caliber to volunteer for that board.
Thank you.
Is there any statement you have prepared or anything you would like to state before I open it up to the commissioners?
No, my application indicates my educational background, my professional license as a professional engineer in New Jersey, retired status, my volunteer status down here. I have also had volunteer status as a youth basketball coach for over 20 years, both for boys and then 5 years for girls. And also was elected for school boards up in New Jersey, both local and regional school boards for 14 years, where I was president and vice president. So my career has basically been working and volunteering.
It will be nice to have you on the code enforcement and be more formally involved with the city. Is there any commissioners who would like to ask more questions? I'll start with our birthday girl.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't have any questions. I think we're all quite familiar with Mr. Binder. I'm very grateful for your dedicated care and concern for the city that you've always shown, your loyalty to ensure the welfare for us by being an active citizen and asking questions and forwarding us questions to ask have been very helpful over the years. I echo the mayor's comments to welcome you into a more formal setting, and thank you for your continued dedication.
Thank you.
It takes all of us to do it, and so love it that you're stepping up. Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
I think that you bring an amazing wealth of experience and knowledge about our city. So I was so happy to see this application come before us, and I welcome you. Maybe one day you'll want to be a commissioner if your wife will allow that. But you have the support of your wife to take on this position, correct?
Say it again?
You have the support of your wife
Oh, yes.
to take on this position, correct?
Yeah. I told her I was filing.
Well, thank you so much for coming forward.
Commissioner Samora?
What took so long?
Say again?
I said, what took so long to apply? Thank you very much for
Well,
stepping forward.
Yeah, I enjoyed being on the Charter Study Commission, the last one, with Mary George's husband and Henry Dean and a number of other people. And it was time.
Yeah.
I just finished volunteering for 14 years for the National Park Service. It's kind of difficult right now with the virus to volunteer. And I was volunteering at Fort Matazza as a deckhand, or I refer to as a first mate, Gilligan, for a lot of those years.
Well, this is, again, very nice to see you step up. Your attendance here, your comments here have always been thoughtful and thorough. Your experience engaging with the city is going to come in handy. So looking forward to having you as part of that board.
Thank you.
Yep, just want to say thank you for filling a position on our boards with community involvement and people like yourself. It's well warranted, and thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioners, if there's no further questions and we have a very qualified candidate, I'll make a motion to approve Mr. Bender to the Code Enforcement Board.
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Any further questions? Being none, the motion is approved, and welcome to the Code Enforcement Board. Thank you so much. All right, we're ready for public comments now. Public comments is 3 minutes, and if you will keep your comments polite, we appreciate it in the spirit of happy holidays. Vice Mayor, if you want to, let's see if if we just start, anyone here in the room want to make any public comments? Mr. Bender, you want to come back up?
First, I'd like to echo the mayor's comments about happy holidays and Merry Christmas to all of you. I also would like to compliment the city and the Public Works for getting the lights on.
Mr. Bender, if you could start with your name and address, please.
Nicholas Bender, 232 Big Magnolia Court, St. Augustine Beach, Florida, 32080. And again, happy holidays, Merry Christmas to you all. I'd like to thank the commissions and the Public Works Director for getting the lights on Beach Boulevard and State A1A. If you have a chance to drive State A1A where the new lights are, it really helps, and hopefully it'll save some lives. I'm going to bring up something you may be discussing in May, the stormwater fees. I would encourage you, if you're going to revisit that, as the Public Finance Director said, the only way they can charge right now is either ad valorem and non-ad valorem, and you may want to look at how other municipalities do charge stormwater fees for consideration. So if you have a time now between now and the springtime to get that information, it would help in the discussion, so we're not rushing through it in June and July to do something for November taxation period. Also, I raised the question before. Mr. Rumwell had brought up about an ordinance or a resolution about flying non-government flags, and that was a number of months ago. And I may have missed it, but I'm not sure if anything's been developed by the attorney. I think the attorney was directed by the board, by the commissions, to do something dealing with the flying of non-government flags. You were dealing with the resolution in 2019 that you approved, and some issues came up this past year, and Mr. Rumwell had suggested that it be revised. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else would like to come up and speak? Lady back there? If you'll state your name and address, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Meryl Hawk. I live at 213 11th Street, St. Augustine Beach. My son turned 14 this summer and now goes to the beach alone with his friends. So as a concerned mom, it's important to me that he has his cell phone so that he can contact me or I can find him if necessary. Unfortunately, we have experienced theft at the beach. My son recently had his cell phone stolen. My son recently had his cell phone stolen from his belongings while he was surfing at the pier. In talking with the police and other families, we came to the conclusion that it would be helpful to have lockers at the beach to prevent theft of valuable items while they're either surfing or in the ocean. I met with some other members of the community who would be willing to serve on such a committee. We realize that the city has certain boundaries that it must abide by, and this may require a joint resolution between the City of St. Augustine Beach and St. Johns County where property boundaries exist for any solutions that's presented. We would have to explore what will meet the needs of our community and present options to you. We would propose several locations where lockers might best benefit our guests in the community, identify cost options, and make recommendations to the city or county, and count on what options to consider in the best interest of our community. Our plan for the committee would be to identify specific locations, check with vendors on cost of the lockers that would not deteriorate when exposed to the elements, logistics required to support the lockers, check on property ownership, whether it's city or county, and present options to the city. Thank you for giving me the time to speak with you this evening. I look forward to your
Thank you.
decisions.
Grand idea. We'd have to involve the county. Max, would that be correct? Because the county is the one that owns the property that probably you would be considering for locations, and also they are the ones that are responsible for the beach. And so have you contacted the county yet on this?
I haven't yet.
Okay, that might be something to do, and then, Max, what steps would you advise as to perhaps get this going?
Well, let me speak with the county first. Talk suggested a committee, but I don't think you want a commission-appointed committee, because then you get into sunshine problems.
Right.
Advertising. You could just have an informal committee of your
Okay.
own people to make recommendations to us, if you want.
Okay.
But, and I need your phone number before you
Okay.
leave. But let me talk with the County Parks and Recreation Director and see what he says.
Thank
Okay.
you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners want to comment on this idea?
I think it's a great idea, and as far as the informal structure of it, I mean, that definitely, I would think that's a wise approach. We have had informal organizations, like neighborhood groups, work together before and present ideas and seen them through. So if you have other people that you know are interested and want to get together and come up with the locations, and I think obviously the biggest question for the city would be the cost, and I'm sure the county is going to feel the same way. But with putting the right brains together and doing fundraising, you can get that all worked out. So I'd be happy to, help however I can. So go with it. And yeah, good idea.
Thank you.
Ms. Hawk, thank you. And anyone else? All right. Anyone else out here in this room would like to speak? Your public comments? This is your chance. Yes, please. Come right on up.
Hi, thanks. I'm James Colley. I live at 10 Versaggi Drive, St. Augustine Beach, 32080. Just a question, actually. We're here to discuss the proposed driveways at the top of Versaggi at Alva's Island. Are we supposed to make our comments now or wait until that section of the agenda?
Wait until that item.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Max, we don't have anyone out in the corridor or in the other room tonight, do we? Okay. All right. Then we'll go forward with commissioner comments. I'll start with our vice mayor.
I have no comments at this time, other than to wish our community, everyone in our city, a very Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever celebration you honor during this season. And I would like to just extend my gratitude for serving. It's been an honor and a privilege. And I'm going to leave my comments at that.
Commissioner George.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I'd like to congratulate Maggie, our vice mayor, for a wonderful term. It's been an honor working with you, and wish you the well in everything you do going forward. I did attend a Tourist Development Council meeting earlier today, and really the main order of business there was selecting nominees for 3 vacancies. And our next meeting won't be until February, so as I get any interesting reports, I'll share those with the City Hall, so they'd be available to the commissioners. And I wanted to wish staff and residents all happy holidays as well. And that'll be it for my comments tonight. Thank you.
Commissioner Samora.
Vice Mayor, looking forward to this final meeting with you. It's been a pleasure serving with you for my time on the commission, and wish you well in your private life after this, and look forward to seeing you around the beach. I don't have any other reports or comments, other than to say have a happy, healthy, safe holiday to everyone.
Commissioner Rumwell?
Yes, thank you. Vice Mayor, what an opportunity to work with you, to learn from you, and to grow as a commissioner because of you. So thank you for your time and opportunity. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas to the residents and to the staff here at City Hall. And I have no comments further than that.
All right. Vice Mayor, thank you for working with me and keeping me in line here at the agenda, keeping the agenda going and the time. I remember doing that myself. You can get so wrapped up in trying to listen to what you're doing to keep time, but thank you again for your service. I want to thank our Public Works and our Communications Director, Melinda Conlon, for the wonderful job they have done in the city lights. And if you missed the surf illumination, make sure you see our Christmas tree. It's amazing. Mr. Tredick, I don't know how we got lights on that big tree. What is it, 24 feet? But it's just shining glory. I mean, it is just wonderful, and our Public Works deserve recognition for all they have done, and the rest of the city staff, and our Communications Director in setting up 4 events, 2 art walks, a market, and surf illumination. We are rocking and rolling in this city for this Christmas season, and it is just happy and wonderful. So thank you all to the staff of St. Augustine Beach for your wonderful work this year. All right. So we will get going on the public hearings, and Bev, would you please, because seeing that, without my glasses, seeing that clock, 5 minutes to 7, would you please alert me? Okay, all right. The first public hearing, item number 1, is for the non-ad valorem special assessment on 2nd Street. Tredick.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Have to turn my head, such a wide group here. At your November 9th meeting, the Commission passed Resolution 20-21, which stated their intent, the city's intent to levy a non-ad valorem assessment to pay the costs for the opening of 2nd Street. To be certain that it's fully compliant with public notice requirements, we're asking that you pass that resolution at today's meeting also, because it had to be advertised 4 consecutive weeks, which has now been done. Notice of the city's intent to levy the non-ad valorem, as I said, had to be published 4 times. After public comments received, and if you're still in favor, you can pass it at today's meeting. I know at the last meeting you asked me to pull together some additional information, which is in your packet, related to the costs. If you have any questions on that, we can go through it. I'll put something up here on the screen just to help if it's right side up. This is in your packet. This is the area. On top is the western portion, which would be expanded. The area on the bottom picture is the eastern portion, which is existing. It's 18 feet wide, and we would propose to increase that to meet the minimum requirements of 22 feet. The prices of that is all in the agenda item. The cost to widen for the roadway and drainage, the cost to extend west of 2nd Avenue for the roadway and drainage portion is $211,714. The cost for doing the water and sewer extensions for that is just under $116,000. The estimated cost for the widening, which is east of 2nd Avenue, is $108,553. So that's not a small piece of a change either, but it does, what I've included in that estimate does include curb and gutter on that section as well as sidewalks. So it's bringing that up to meet current city code. Excuse me. Looking at the breakdown of what that means, for the purposes of this analysis, There's 3 lots which we're talking about possibly being donated to the city. So for the purposes of this analysis, the utility costs would be divided by however many lots are owned by private entities for development. So either 16, 14, 15, 13, whatever that number is, based upon if 3 lots are given, it would be 13. Those 13 would pay the full utility extension costs. This estimate shows the remainder, the roadway and construction costs to be divided by 16. So if you look at that, if no lots are given to the city, each individual lot would have to pay $16,063. If 1 lot goes to conservation, that goes up a little bit to $16,545. If you go, in fact, let me go ahead and put that up there. Make it a little bit easier. If all 3 lots are deeded to the city for conservation, the individual costs would go up to $17,734. So there is an increase because the utility price is broken down under less lots if some of the lots come to the city. However, within this scenario, the actual road and drainage construction cost remains divided by 16, so that actually slightly increases the city's cost too. So lots get donated, both ours and the owner costs go up a little bit. It's kind of an even thing where both sides have to pay a little more if those lots get donated. I did, for the sake of comparison, look at what happens if we simply divide it by I have it here, but I have it committed to memory also. So if we simply divide the road and construction costs by 13, for instance, as well as the utility, each individual owner would pay $19,700. The city's cost would then stay the same at 1/3 of the overall cost, if that makes sense.
Will you give me that figure again, 19,000?
$19,769, and that is assuming that 3 lots are donated to the city, and the owners of the other 13 lots pay for the full 2/3 cost. The one that is in your packet is a slightly less cost for the lot owners, in that the road and bridges, or the road and drainage continues to be divided by 16 lots. It's a little confusing, but the point being, if we're taking these lots, is it fair to ask the homeowner, the lot owners, to now pay a higher amount for the development of the road because we're taking lots? And that's a decision the commission has to make, strike that balance. I think it's fair for them to pay the utilities. The city's not going to have utilities on those lots that are in conservation. My feeling it's also fair for us to pay the portion of the lots that are donated to the city, but again, that's the commission's decision. Just some points. Got too many papers here. I know it's here. Yeah. Anyway, it disappeared on me. So there are some things we have to decide here today. I found it. We have to determine the amount. We don't have to determine it today, but just I wanted to give you the number of what the individual lot owners might be facing as far as that goes. We have to decide, you have to decide if you're going to do a non-ad valorem assessment. Now, we've talked a little bit about special assessment too, where we could assess the property owners, they pay, and we have their cash. If that were the case, and that could be done in a parallel path, if that were the case, they wouldn't be assessed on a non-ad valorem assessment. So we could go forward at this point with the non-ad valorem assessment, just like we did last year for solid waste. Continue to do a parallel process of developing a special assessment, and if they pay the full amount up front with a special assessment, they would not be, the non-ad valorem would not go on their tax rolls. So we do have that option and that flexibility. But either way, in order to move forward with a non-ad valorem, we've got to make a decision and pass the resolution tonight. we have some other things we want to think about. When do we want to start work? And how much cash in the bank, so to speak, do you want to have before we actually start the construction? If everyone does a non-ad valorem assessment, we'll be fully reliant on impact fees to start the project. Do we budget for it in FY22 and start at that point? I've talked to Patty about that. We do have the funds in the road impact fees to do that, but that's a decision for the upcoming budget cycle. And how long, and this is, I think, an important question. If we're going to do a non-ad valorem assessment, how long do we do it for? Do you do it for 5 years, for 10 years? What is affordable for the lot owners to pay that aren't planning to build, that are just sitting on their lots for the foreseeable future? If you do it over 10 years, that's at $17,000, that's $1,700.70 per year. So that's a pretty significant assessment for an undeveloped lot. So there's a desire, obviously, to get it done quickly and get the money, but there's also to consider what that impact is on the individual lot owners and what the correct term to do that non-ad valorem assessment would be. So a lot of things to think about. Today, we don't have to make all those decisions, but I wanted to go through it briefly just because I did do the cost estimates. Today, we're asking that the resolution get repassed, and happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Tredick, please address underground utilities.
Okay, so...
Maybe on the extended part, tell me about the widened part.
So prior to putting this item together, I didn't have a cost. I still don't have a firm cost, but I did get a call back from FPL. It would be upwards of around $40,000, maybe a little less. That's a high-end estimate. Without having actual plans developed, they couldn't give me a firm price. However, it could be as high as $40,000 for the new area, for the extension. But again, I do not have a firm price on that. That is a back of the napkin FPL number, just top end what it could be.
And what about the widening?
The widening is 108,000, I think, or 105, 108. I had it here.
I see 108, 5, 53, 23. Does that include underground utilities?
No.
And Max and I attended some seminars a couple of years ago that said if you put a shovel and dig up any dirt, then go ahead and do the underground utilities. So you haven't for the widening. Is there a special reason why you haven't?
Only that I don't have a cost.
Okay.
Everything from FPL at this point is very, very rough. And until I have a design plan, I can't get them to quote me a price for what it would cost to put those underground.
But could we assume that it's going to be about the same price, an estimate of 40,000 plus, for the widening as well as the extended?
I would think that would be a top end, yes.
Okay.
I think it probably might come in less than that. That's a top end number, so.
Okay. So for tonight, we need to make a decision on the resolution. And then, do you have any updates on the dedicating those 3 lots to a nonprofit?
I do not have an update on that tonight.
Max, no, you say nothing, Max, so we don't have an update on that?
No, Mayor.
Okay. So the commissioners, if you want to discuss whether or not the cost of widening or not, the cost of extending Second Street should be divided by 13 or divided by 16, if you want to discuss that. Don't have to make a decision, but we can discuss. Mr. Tredick, anything else?
No, that's it. Just would, like, as I said, the resolution being passed again is important. And then we would continue to move forward. We'd send a letter to the tax collector, letting him know that we're moving forward. And then we'd bring this back up in the spring. We'd be a little further along in the process, and sometime next summer, we would actually set the rate and the tax roll and who would be on it. As I said, we could work in parallel to figure out what that special assessment would be if somebody wants to pay in advance. But we also do need to figure out what threshold do we want to go forward with this road? Do we want to collect money first, or do we want to say 50% of the people pay? Is that a threshold that would be acceptable to budget this project and construct it? Or do we want to do it now regardless? I mean, in other words, do we want to put some money in the bank before we actually start construction? So that's kind of some guidance I would look for, what the commission's thoughts are. If they want, we can put this in the budget for next year and start working towards it.
Mr. Tredick, has anyone reached out to the Second Street residents, or have any of them come forward to indicate their preference of either an assessment or a non-ad valorem tax? And if we went non-ad valorem tax, how long of a term that they would prefer?
That conversation, to my knowledge, hasn't happened as far as how long of a term they would prefer. I know that certainly there are several people that are against it. There are more people that are for it. So, but as far as the term, that conversation has not happened yet, no. At this point, we just got the numbers together of what the overall cost would be, so.
I think
now's
that would be an important part of the conversation, since they're the ones that have to pay. And so would it be easier for them to pay over 3 years or 5 years? I think that's an important part that we're missing. What would they prefer?
No, I agree that has to be determined, and it doesn't change the overall cost.
Right.
But
No, it doesn't at all.
But it has to be determined what's the most appropriate way to make it palatable and affordable to the people that are not planning to build there anytime soon.
Of course, and I have one more question. So these are the estimates or the figures of what it would cost to do that project today? And so
Yes.
if we waited to collect the money, say for 3 years from now, till we got 50% or more in the bank to be able to do the project, what would the cost be then? Are we taking into consideration the increase in costs for waiting?
These are 2020 costs, so depending upon what happens, and I can't predict, some years it's flat and other years it goes up, but over the long haul it goes up. So it will certainly cost a little more. There is a 20% contingency in this, so for a couple of years, I think we'd be okay on that, but we would have to, if we wait too long, obviously the
Then we're gonna
costs
be out
could
of
go
it.
up,
Yep.
especially things like asphalt and things they can change dramatically based on oil prices and things like that, so.
Absolutely. I've never seen the cost of things go down in construction.
It's rare. I mean, maybe a little bit after the crash in 2008, but it didn't last long.
Thank you.
Commissioner George, your questions, comments?
Thank you, Mr. Tredick, for all of your research on this and hard work. I don't have any questions for you. I do have some comments. Oh, no, that's not true. I do have a question, actually. What about on the widening? Did that budget for the preserving the trees on that east lot that are really close to the roadway, kind of as it is, it kind of bends around some of them?
That level of detail is not in the budget. We would design around that.
Is that something that would impact the budget, though, the estimate much? I mean, do we need to worry about that?
Probably not significantly, unless we needed land to avoid the tree or an easement, and then we'd have to approach the property owner to talk about that. But as long as that's not necessary and we can fit it within the right-of-way, we can probably work around the trees as we've done in other subdivisions. It affects it a little bit, but not dramatically.
As far as the intention of widening it, has anyone done any measurements? I mean, is it feasible with those trees, or do you know on this project would be looking at being able to leave them where they are?
Until we get a tree survey for those trees,
I see.
I can't tell you that with any certainty.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I mean,
Mayor, do you want me to leave my comments for after everybody goes through their questions?
No, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, You know, when I was reviewing this material, I also came up with that question of, you know, dividing the roadway and drainage construction costs by 16 versus 13, because it occurred to me that, you know, typically we would not be paying more than a third, even where we have parkettes or plazas. And the city receiving these lots, if we do receive them, it would not be for development purposes. We do have access to those lots as it stands from our existing parkette. They're immediately adjacent. So I think that those factors all weigh in favor of dividing that fee by the 13, because really that's the cost related to, relevant to development of those lots. I really don't want to put us in a position where we're acting as a developer or giving a disproportionate advantage to lot owners that any other lot in the city owners never received. You know, we didn't underwrite anybody else's development. So I think it's important that we're even-handed in that way. I do think that undergrounding everything and anything we can along the way is going to be an asset for all of the residents in that area. I mean, statistics I've heard is that it can increase property values 10 to 15% to not have the overhead utilities. It's a matter of safety as well as aesthetics. So I'm strongly in favor of that. And I do think it's important that we get some of the money. I don't know that it would make sense or be efficient, however, to delay until we have all of it, precisely for the reasons that Vice Mayor was bringing up. We could get into kind of this constant need for readjusting the price based upon the delayed construction costs. So I think there's probably a middle balance there that we can achieve, provided we have the funds. And I think we've determined to a certain extent, yes, we have the money in the impact fee funds, right? But it's a balancing act between the other critical infrastructure needs that we have. So if we budget it, but something else comes up, and there's more, I don't know, you know, heavier need for a different roadway, what is the impact, given that we've already gone through this process? I mean, is that something we could just delay it a year, even though we've started to collect money from the taxpayers? Do you know the answer to that question?
I don't know that I have the answer. I know that the people that would be interested in having it done sooner than later would probably prefer a special assessment, because they would contribute their cash now, guaranteeing that it gets budgeted. If everybody does the non-ad valorem assessment and we want to bank 30% of the money, I'm just picking a number, bank 30% of the money before we start construction, it could be a few years, and that doesn't help people that want to build something now. So if we could get that first half to all pay in a special assessment, pay up front, and do the non-ad valorem on the remainder, that would probably get us to where we need to go to be able to budget this thing next year and actually construct it, if that answers your question. But
Close enough.
you know, if we did the whole thing with impact fees, it would severely deplete the impact fee.
Right.
Road impact fees, and we would have very little left to do other projects while we're waiting to recover that money.
Right.
So that's where, if you want to try to gather 30 or 50%, something like that, that doesn't totally deplete our impact fee balance, and we can still address some of the other projects in the city that are fundable through impact fees.
Okay, thank you. I'll be interested to hear the other questions and comments from the other commissioners. Thank you.
Commissioner Samora, are you ready to comment on this one?
I am. I've got several questions and comments. I don't know if I'm going to get to all of them, but I'll get some of them out there. One of the things that just came up this evening, though, that has me a little apprehensive is this was brought to us by someone who wanted to develop this and do it quickly. Somebody who was interested in developing those lots, and that's why we're all talking about it still. And then your comments about, well, we can budget it for next year or the year after that. I don't want to end up in the same place we were a few months ago, where we're looking at something a commission did 4, 5, 6, 8 years ago and never really got to it. So whatever we do, whether it's a special assessment, non-ad valorem, I think we need to keep that in mind, that there are some folks that are going to be interested in moving ahead with this as quickly as possible. Maybe somebody comes in and buys all of those lots and wants to pay it up front. I hope that we would be able to have the funding to make that happen, if that were the will. Because again, that's what got us here. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that this was brought to us by people that wanted this open, and they probably don't have a 5-year timeline on this. They probably have a 18-month timeline on it, if that. So keep that in mind as we're going through this. I do have a question for staff, and maybe this is more for Patty, but do you have a preference in any of the research that you've done on non-ad valorem assessment versus special assessment? Does staff have a preference at this point?
So it would be my preference to offer a hybrid. Tonight, the only thing that we're looking for is guidance that we will continue to pursue a non-ad valorem should it be needed. My thought is that we would go ahead and have the meeting with the residents on the street, tell them the cost of what it is. We can then bill out the full cost as we have in other streets that we've done in the recent, past. And those that pay will automatically not have to worry about the non-ad valorem. We would put that into, our reserves to go ahead and pay for it. We'd set up a special account. It would be managed. It's strictly for that road. As you said, from all the hearings that I've been to, there are approximately 8 out of the 13 that are looking at moving forward pretty quickly. Given that number, those 8 may go ahead and pay the full extent, the full cost up front. With that money, we certainly would not be depleting our impact fee reserve balance. We could go ahead and use that, and then it would be just setting a timeline on how are we going to move forward with the other 5 that are out there. And then setting a 5-year, 10-year time to recover that money, making the decision, do we want to go ahead and move forward now that we have 8 out of the 13? And then at what point, do we start construction? We could easily, get that into next year's budget, utilizing the money that comes in the special assessment that people pay up front. So we definitely could do a hybrid effect on this.
I like that approach, the hybrid approach. On the non-ad valorem, what's the timeline for the city to send to the county what the cost of what that non-ad valorem would be and what the structure would be? When would we be looking at that?
So similar to what we did with the solid waste, we would have to notice the owners that would be affected, giving them 30 days in advance that we're going to have a public hearing. They would be asked to attend that hearing and voice their concerns. The commission would then vote on it, and it would be implemented with the certified tax roll in September. So we have several months to kind of get everything together, finalize it. I would say that it would be my preference not to push that into budget season into July. Let's not push it off that far, because then we start getting involved with budgeting. So probably the end of the first quarter, we should be ready to go ahead and do our special assessments and get those out to the residents. Let those that are willing to pay go ahead and make those payments. And then we have maybe the second quarter of 2021 to go ahead and make that decision on having our public hearing, finalizing how many years we want to assess the non-ad valorem, and then moving forward with it before we have to finalize and certify the roll in September.
So what I'm hearing is the next couple of months, we need to have the numbers kind of dialed in so that we can present special assessment and then non-ad valorem. Okay, very good. Let's see, I'm not going to get into the detail on the design plan, I guess, at this point, but I have several concerns with it and questions. But more to the 3 lots. So in the material presented, the North Florida Land Trust did not accept, I guess, the gift of the 3 lots, and now they're going to Alachua Land Trust, and after that, they may come to the city. Is that what I'm understanding?
Excuse me, the North Florida Land Trust Board said no, they didn't want the 3 lots. They deal with multiple acreage.
Okay.
So the, Ms. DiToledo and Mr. Craddock went to the Alachua Land Trust. And there's no decision yet from them, but they did indicate the land trust was interested in taking those lots.
If the Alachua Land Trust accept those lots, do they also accept the responsibility for any assessment with them? Is that a possibility?
That I don't know.
Let's look into that, I guess, or
Okay.
if they don't accept it, the point is moot, but if they do accept it, would they also be accepting financial responsibility for anything like that?
By the time you had the public hearing, we should know that answer.
Okay.
Like next spring or before the budget season begins, we would have those answers.
Very good, thank you. I will leave my questions and comments at that for now.
Okay. Commissioner Rumwell?
Yep, thank you, Mayor. Mr. Truddick, we had a good conversation today, so I appreciate that. Were you able to find out a little bit about the impact fees for the sidewalks on the widening part of the east side of that?
I did have a conversation with the city attorney about
Okay.
that today, and a case could be made that the sidewalks are necessary because of the increased traffic associated with the building of the extension.
Right.
So that's a discussion we have to investigate a little more deeply to make sure we're on sound ground there.
Okay,
It shouldn't be any problem for the actual widening of the road.
okay,
I talked to St. Johns County today, and that's their interpretation, is that widening of a road increases capacity.
that's what we had talked
And
about.
therefore, that capacity increase is eligible for impact fee funding.
Okay,
Sidewalks by themselves for an already developed road are not.
Are
So
not,
that's
correct.
where it's a little bit gray,
right,
to be honest. The sidewalk with the extension, that's part of the road, so that's an easy case to build that.
okay,
But it's the piece east of there that we still need. We believe it can be done with impact, but we're not 100% certain yet.
okay. And then I had written down during all the discussions, I agree with Patty and Commissioner Samora on kind of the hybrid. I wrote down maybe 50% down and then assess the rest. And then also that if someone is pulling permits, so say the road's in, once the permits are pulled, that then would trigger the remaining amount because they are now ready to build. So I think that might be another way to collect the money faster. And I kind of circled a 5-year plan because I think that's a sufficient time to do it without depleting, to Commissioner George's concerns, our entire monies. So that was kind of the what I had written down, that just that kind of hybrid, 50% down, I think that's fair. And then the folks who are not going to build, they have 5 years to pay it off. And then the folks that are going to build and pull permits, which I think there's about 8, that as soon as they pull permits, the remainder of the amount of money is due or at sale. So if they should sell the lots now that the road is in, then that should also be paid off as well. And that's kind of my comments on how to kind of get to that number.
Anything else?
No, Madam Mayor?
All right. I also echo, let's get going on this. Let's settle on our financing. We first started talking about a special assessment, then moved to the next meeting, the non-ad valorem assessment, and now we're talking about a hybrid, which is absolutely fine. But let's settle and by the next meeting and decide which is the best way to proceed on those different types of, and I would also agree with Commissioner George on dividing by, I think you said 13, and would like to start as if we have at least a third of the money up front, or even lower. I want to get going on this and get it approved and get it in the budgets and get the project going. And then as far as the amount of time that it would take for the residents to pay the remaining special assessment, I'm in favor of a longer period, 5 years. And let's just see how much we get up front. And we also need to decide on the workshop to inform the residents of what our decisions are very clearly and set forth. Here's what we're going to do first, special assessment, and non-ad valorem, and then the special assessment, the amount, the estimates, how it's going to work, how it's going to be divided, and the amount each lot owner will be responsible for, what the city is kicking in. And then I think it's really important for us to get the widening part nailed down. I really want those sidewalks.
Mayor, I'm sorry, but it's time for...
Okay, all right, well, I'm going to temporarily stop the regular meeting, and we'll take a break for just a few minutes, and then we will start the special meeting on the budget. So we'll take a break for just a few minutes so we can start right at 7 for the budget meeting.
So we come back in how much time? 10 minutes?
Right at 7 o'clock.
At 7 o'clock. We have to start right at 7 o'clock on the dot.
We just have to read it in order.
I'm trusting you.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if I go that far.
You gonna get me that ordinance on the mobile food?
It wasn't what you wanted. Okay.
All we need to do is amend the ordinance.
Okay.
Not the changes.
Okay.
Brian, may I ask a question? Simply making a permitted use.
Oh, okay.
I guess we're just in recess.
At this point, it's
Depends on who.
not permitted. May I ask a question?
Okay.
If it's about an agenda item, we'd prefer you wait for
Okay.
the agenda
That's
item
much
so that all the commissioners can hear it at the same time.
I'll
closing.
We have to do budget, right?
There won't be
Yeah,
anything open.
Sunset Grill usually does,
Go to design.
but it's, we've tried to stay open, and it's
The only
just
thing is,
so
we might be designing something.
quiet.
Finalized, which means it might sit on the shelf, but they don't actually. And we might have to reimburse that money. Build it.
I was looking through sales information from days that we were open. It's like, some days it's like $80 for the whole day. Yeah.
We're
no.
ready to get started again.
That's right. But it will go up in time.
Commissioner, can you see, is it 7 on that?
It says 7 o'clock
Yeah,
on
we
my.
definitely need a bigger clock.
All right, okay. I'm calling to order a special meeting as advertised to adopt amendments to the St. Augustine Beach advertisement on the millage rate and the 2021 budget. Patty or Max, which one of you are going to do the presentation on this item? Okay?
I will do that. So we received a notification from the Florida Department of Revenue that the original ad that we placed in the newspaper for our final budget hearing was improperly stated for the revenue. We have to state our revenue at 95%, the ad valorem taxes at 95% and no less. So in order to rectify this, the Department of Revenue allows us to re-advertise. They submitted the corrected advertisement that was posted in the paper on Saturday. And now, at this point, we should re-vote on the millage at the 2.45, read the ordinance, and we should also re-adopt our budget as it was written.
Okay, so it's simply reading the ordinance again to adopt the millage rate and then to adopt the budget.
Correct. We have to do it in that order. It has to be the millage first and then the budget second.
Okay.
And so Lex has a copy of the ordinances
Okay,
to
we
be read.
don't, but our city
Correct.
attorney, you have the ordinance, okay?
He does.
All right.
read it whenever you
So,
want.
Okay, any commissioners have questions about why we're redoing this again? Then if we will, Mr. Taylor, if you'll just read the first ordinance about the millage rate.
All right. Ordinance number 20-10, amended, an ordinance of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida, providing for the levy and collection of an ad valorem property tax of $2.45 for every 1,000 and no 100,000ths or $1,000 of assessed property value, which is equivalent to 2.45 mils, for the fiscal year 2020-2021, to be used for general purposes, providing for the levy and collection of an additional ad valorem property tax of $0.500 of assessed property value, which is equivalent to 0.5 mils for the fiscal year 2020-2021, to be used for the city's debt service for repayment of the acquisition of the Marietta property, or Marietta property, and providing an effective date. Be it ordained by the City Commission of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida, Section 1, that the millage rate of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida, to be levied shall be 2.45 mils for general operating budget for the fiscal year 2020-2021. Section 1A, that the additional millage rate of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida, to be levied shall be 0.5 mils for repayment of debt service for the acquisition of the Marietta property for the fiscal year 2020-2021. Section 2, the rollback rate is 2.2852 per $1,000. The increase in property taxes adopted by the city stated as a percentage of 7.21%, which is the percentage by which the millage rate to be levied increased the rollback rate. Section 3, that the city manager of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida, be and is hereby directed to appropriately notify and advertise the property appraiser and tax collector of the County of St. John's of such millage rate. Further, the city manager is hereby directed to notify the Division of Ad valorem Tax of the Department of Revenue by furnishing the proper statement of compliance, together with a copy of this ordinance, a copy of the certification of value, and a certified copy of the legal notice preceding the adoption of the ordinance. Section 4, the ordinance shall take effect upon its passage. Section 5, should any portion or part of this ordinance be judged invalid by a court of competent jurisdiction, the remaining language of this ordinance shall survive in full force so as to carry out the spirit and intent of this ordinance.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 2010 as amended.
Second?
All right, all in favor?
Mayor, before we take the vote, was there any public comment requested on this item?
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any,
I have no cards for public comment.
all right, then I'll restate that motion again to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Being none, this ordinance number 20-10 as amended is approved. And Mr. Taylor, if you'll read ordinance number 20-11.
Ordinance number 20-11 amended, an ordinance of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida, ratifying, approving, and adopting the annual budget or budget estimates of revenues and expenditures for the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida, for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, 2020, and ending September 30th, 2021, prescribing time for the taking of effect. Be it ordained by the City Commission of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida, Section 1, that the annual budget estimates of revenues and expenditures of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida for the fiscal year 2020-2021, as prepared, amended, and submitted to the City Commission of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida by the City Manager, as considered and acted upon by said City Commission, under and by authority of the Charter of the said city and the laws of Florida, are hereby ratified, approved, and adopted by the City Commission, and the amounts of money set forth therein are hereby appropriated. Section 2, that said budget of revenues and expenditures adopted for the ensuing fiscal year 2020-2021 be spread in full upon the minutes of the City Commission. That Section 3, that said budget may be amended from time to time during the fiscal year 2020-2021 by the City Commission by resolution. Section 4, this ordinance shall take effect upon its passage.
Is there any public comment on this?
I have no cards on this item.
All right, I do have one question for our finance director. The budget figures that were given to us would, like the budget, would it be changed too? I know the revenues on the notices, the tax notice has changed, but would anything change in the budget you gave us?
It is simply a notice of what was posted in the newspaper.
Okay,
so.
all right. Then I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 20-11 as amended.
I'll second.
All right. Being no further comment on this, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or have further questions? Hearing none, ordinance number 20-11 as amended is approved. And is there anything else, Patty, that I need to do regarding this matter?
No, ma'am, you can officially close
Okay.
the budget
Then
meeting.
I will adjourn the special meeting and open. Can I have a motion and a second for adjournment? Okay.
The motion to adjourn the special budget meeting?
Awesome.
Thank you. Have a motion and a second. All in favor to adjourn the special meeting, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, the special meeting on the budget is adjourned.
Thank you so much.
And I will open back up our regular meeting to continue our discussion. This is a regular December 7th meeting of the St. Augustine Beach Commission, to continue our discussion of public hearing item number 1 for levying the non-ad valorem special assessment. And I think all the commissioners had an opportunity to speak, but anyone have any additional comments?
Just wanted to kind of remind us that, our budget is in a very sensitive position right now. So when we start talking about, we only need 30% of the funds collected for this project in order to move forward, I think we always have to be very conscious of just a few months ago, we sat here and went through a very difficult budget process because our budget is so sensitive and we are very strapped for funds. I'm all in favor of moving this project forward, but I think that tonight what we're tasked with is approving the non-ad valorem to be able to be processed for the tax rolls, and how many lots or how it's going to be divided. Is that our task at hand?
I don't think at this point we even need to have the number of lots to be divided. I think we simply need to pass the resolution again that you are intending to levy a non-ad valorem assessment. And correct me if I'm wrong, Patty, but that's my understanding. And after that, it will go to, that letter will go out to the tax collector that we're intending to do that. And then later on in the spring, we'll start that process of fine-tuning
Putting the
it.
details together.
Putting the details together.
Wonderful.
Is there anything we need to do with regard to the, doing that simultaneous with the special assessment or tonight? No, okay.
No, the
All
only
right.
thing would be the, just the intent that you are approving the resolution to move forward, considering a non-ad valorem. Of course, you can always take that off the table as we get further before we come to certifying the tax roll in September.
I think doing both simultaneously, the hybrid option you discussed makes the most sense. I think there was consensus on that, so.
I have no speaker cards on this item.
All right. There being no further discussion by the commissioners and no speaker cards, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 20-21.
Second.
All right. Beverly, let's do a roll call vote on this one.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner George,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Costco,
Yes.
Commissioner Samora,
Yes.
Commissioner Rumbaugh,
Yes.
and Mayor Ringway.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
All right, the next item is an ordinance. Mr. Law?
Yes, good evening. This is the exact same one we've seen for the last 2 months. No changes has been made. At last month's Planning and Zoning, they did vote 7-0 that you adopted as written.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Law, since this is a ordinance we've seen before? Any public comment?
I have no speaker cards on this item.
All right, then I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 20-14.
I'll second that.
Would that need to be read in title?
Yes,
Just title, yeah.
title.
An ordinance of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida, making findings of fact, amending the city's land development regulations, Section 4.01.06, recreation, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict, and providing for codification and providing an immediate effective date.
All right, we have a motion to approve and a second, and since we've seen this before, I'll just call all in favor.
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or further questions? Hearing none, ordinance number 20-14 is approved. There's no consent items, and so the next item is item number 3 on the agenda, the Versaghi Drive ingress and egress for Alvin's Island.
Yes, good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. I'll try to be as quick as Brian was. No, that was an attempt at humor. Not a good one. On March 2nd, 2015, so 5 years ago, well, almost 6 years ago, the commission voted to deny driveway connections from Versaghi Drive to 3848 A1A South, Alvin's Island. Edmonds Family Partnership, the owner of both properties, both north and south of Versaghi, take this off, appealed that decision to the Circuit Court, and the court remanded the issue back to the City Commission. On March 1st, 2016, the City Commission denied the request on remand. So the owner filed suit, and I'm going to give you a little background on it. Regarding the city's sign ordinance and the denial of the driveway. In February 2017, mediation between the city and the owner, Edmonds Family Partnership, resulted in a settlement agreement which was approved unanimously by the City Commission on April 3rd, 2017. That settlement agreement allowed Edmunds Partnership to build a driveway on the south side, which has now been built. That was built back then. It also allowed them to come back 2.5 years later and build a driveway on the north side. There were some stipulations about what that driveway could be. Based on the settlement agreement, it was supposed to be a left-in only off of Versaghi. And I included the paragraphs from the settlement agreement in the commission packet. So the 2.5 years have passed, and in January 2020, the owner's engineers submitted a plan, and I'll put that up on the screen. Now, I went into this kind of blind. I knew nothing about the settlement agreement, nothing about any of that. I just got this site plan, this sketch plan, really. It wasn't to the point of a site plan. And I immediately noticed some serious safety concerns about that left in. When I say the left in, I'm talking about the driveway up here. East is to the right. A1A is the big road on the left. And some of my concerns related to that concept were the sweeping left in. So vehicles coming off State Road A1A, traveling at 45 miles an hour, they slow down a little bit to turn onto Versaghi, but they don't really have to slow down to get into a sweeping left in, and they're forced to cross the oncoming traffic lane. It's just not a good scenario. It's a scenario that's bad for the pedestrians on the sidewalk. It's bad for the vehicles trying to come out on Versaghi. It's just a matter of time before that results, in my opinion anyway, in a pretty serious accident at that location. Because of that, you know, oftentimes, and I've seen sweeping left-ins off of larger roads, there's usually a stacking lane where vehicles wait for an opening to go. In this case, cars are going to try to, if a car's coming down Versaghi, it's very likely a car's going to try to beat it and get into the Alvin's Island parking lot. It's just human nature. You try to beat the traffic. So I was very concerned about the speed of vehicles coming into that parking lot. And I also had a lot of concerns about the fact that it looks like a right out. It may be a left in, but it looks just like a right turn out. And when you're designing roadways, you want to keep things as standardized, as simple as possible, so that people don't get confused, because drivers get confused, especially when there's traffic. And this area is an area where traffic is increasing. That's absolutely right, and the neighborhood residents can attest to that. The traffic on A1A is getting worse. It's stacking up frequently, I don't know frequently, but often enough past Versaghi. So there is a problem there with A1A's traffic. So seeing these issues and my concerns about it, again, not knowing any of the history, just looking at it and saying, this doesn't look good. I met with our engineer and we tried to come up with something that was a little safer, something that provided a better, more traditional driveway. And after, I can get it to focus. After a little bit of back and forth, their engineer came up with this scenario, which is a traditional 90-degree driveway. It's an ingress and an egress driveway. It really, in my opinion, it reduces driver confusion considerably. It also eliminates people disregarding traffic patterns. You know, with that sweeping left in, and I saw pictures that one of the residents had sent of a car across the street at the Verizon going out what's supposed to be an ingress. The people typically will do what is convenient. And if you give them an odd and somewhat confusing intersection, you're increasing the potential for conflicts, you're increasing the potential for accidents. The angle here from Versaghi would be 90 degrees, which would require vehicles to slow down to make that turn, so you don't have the sweeping turn. It's also further from A1A, so it gives a little more time to decelerate as you're coming off A1A to make that turn. The sidewalk was shifted also closer to Versaghi, so there's better visibility of pedestrians. So it creates a much safer driveway connection. It does go beyond what they were allowed to ask for, because they were not allowed to ask for an egress. They were allowed to ask for an ingress. In addition, the owner has offered to move the dumpster. The dumpster is currently located about where my finger is. Moving that up to the other side of these parking spaces, there'll be a lot better visibility, or I should say, improvement in aesthetics. Reduced visibility of seeing the dumpster. It's just an overall better plan. I'll get into it in a minute. We had a neighborhood meeting, but I wanted to talk to some about why I think it's a good idea to let vehicles come out on to A1A from Versaghi. So right now, anybody who's visiting Alvin's Island coming from the south, what's happening is they're frequently turning into Versaghi, can't get in. There's no driveway there, so they either turn around in someone's driveway, they drive around the neighborhood. It's not a desirable condition. The ingress makes perfect sense from that standpoint. Somebody pulls in, they get into Alvin's, and the problem's solved. The problem is when people are leaving Alvin's, under the current configuration, there's only two ways out. There's the main driveway here, and there's a one-way out driveway up there on the approach to A1A Beach Boulevard. So with this traffic starting to stack up as traffic conditions get worse, a vehicle coming out of the driveway right here has to cross 2 lanes, actually 2.5 lanes, because it's actually starting to be the acceleration lane onto A1A Beach Boulevard, the merge lane. So really you've got to cross the beginning of that ramp to A1A Beach Boulevard, the right lane, the right through lane, the left through lane to get to the left turn lane to make a U-turn at the north. Because if someone wants to go south, their only choice is to go turn right and make a U-turn and head south. So right now, that's what they're having to do, to make a U-turn at this location. Cross 2 lanes of traffic. Very dangerous situation. I'm sure all of you have been in a situation where there's a car that leaves a gap and he says, come on, come on, and there's a car flying up in the left lane. It's a classic T-bone situation. It's not a desirable thing to have. By letting the vehicles come out down here at Versaghi, or at least some of them, those that are wanting to go south, they only have to cross 1 lane, and then they're in a position to get into the left turn lane and make that U-turn. It's a much safer configuration on A1A. Now, I know it does put a little bit more traffic going west on Versaghi, but it dramatically, in my opinion, dramatically improves the safety in that congested intersection on A1A. And so knowing that this is, at this point in my learning of this project, I now knew it was somewhat of a contentious item. So we scheduled a neighborhood meeting, and we sent out letters to everybody that lives in the area, all the streets, Versaghi, Lindemar, Oceanside, Manatee, etc., and all those are in the actual memo. We didn't get a lot of feedback from that meeting. We had 1 request for a copy of the settlement agreement, and we had 1 email that was in opposition that had opposed before. And they had a few items, no southbound A1A. They wanted no southbound U-turn allowed at Versaghi, and makes sense. It's a DOT issue. We'd have to work with them on that. Additional signs to increase pedestrian and bicycle safety, which absolutely could be done. But they had concerns that allowing ingress and egress on Versaghi increases danger. And I would say that I think it's just the opposite. It actually decreases danger because it reduces conflicts, it creates a safer condition, and I would recommend that we seriously consider that. So we did have the property owners that came out to this neighborhood meeting. We had 3 people out. 1 was opposed, 1 was kind of neutral, and 1 was for. The one that was opposed was the property directly behind Alvin's on Versaghi. And the owner, we tried to reach a settlement, tried to reach some agreement that would make them more agreeable. One of their concerns was increased visibility of cars turning in, increased noise. So the owner offered to put in a fence to screen that property from Versaghi down to the beginning of the building, so that parking lot would be better screened. And after that discussion, it was agreed, at least with those people that were in attendance at the neighborhood meeting, that that would be acceptable. And they would allow, or not object to the egress onto Versaghi. And the owner also agreed to relocate the dumpster, as they said. Now, we did start to receive some additional emails after the public meetings. I'm sure the commission's got a few of those who have some signatures of people that are opposed to it. People are very worried about the traffic congestion, and they have a right to worry about it. It's getting worse everywhere in the city. It's unfortunately a fact of life in St. Johns County. It doesn't go the other way. But I do believe that this creates a safer intersection. There was also some concerns about the traffic signage, and we would work with Edmunds to make sure the traffic signs on their property, the stop signs, the no entry signs, things like that are brought up to speed so that they're visible and clearly marked. So the bottom line, the summary is that with the terms of the settlement agreement, they absolutely have the right to have an ingress. My testimony is that it's a safer design to allow egress also in that situation, and I would recommend it. And I would ask that you authorize the Alvin's Island driveway connection to include a right out only. Again, they would not be allowed to come out and turn left to go east on Versaghi. It would be right out only. And in addition to the westbound left in. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and I know there's probably quite a few public comments coming on this one.
Let's go ahead and take public comments first. Vice Mayor, if you have a list.
I currently have no speaker cards, so if you would like to speak on this item, if you could fill out a speaker card from the back of the room and present it, I will call you one at a time.
Do I need to fill on the Edmunds, the owner of the property, do I need to fill one out?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, if you would, please.
In order to move this along, if one of the speakers would like to come forward, state your name and address, and you can turn in your speaker card later. Sir, step up, please. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Albert Kador. I live at 18 Versaghi Drive. Been there 17 years. We were privy to the settlement dispute that was originally had put the city at a liability for the settlement to begin with, which allowed them to put an ingress there at Alvin's Island. Begin with, the error of the city for the initial settlement opened the door for this can of worms as far as I'm concerned. If you're familiar with the accident of Mr. Rott, where a motorcycle struck his vehicle as he turned onto Versaghi Drive, that scenario would be compounded if not only an ingress is put in based on your already prior agreement to settle with this gentleman, with the business, but if you put a ingress and regress there, it will definitely compound. Now, here's a little testimony. Coming onto Versaghi Drive recently, a UPS delivery truck had blocked the ingress to the Verizon property. Therefore, blocking that, and a car wanting to get into that property was unable to. So now that car was stopped alongside the truck in the lane coming onto Versaghi. Now, if that were compounded a little bit more, you would have cars backing into A1A. So there's a scenario that I witnessed myself. I got out of the car, I parked further up, walked into the Verizon place. They said, "You're illegally parked, you can't back the traffic up. There's a car trying to get into your parking lot." Second thing, the A1A area is a DOT concern, and it should be addressed from that perspective with the owner of the property concerning his desire to use a residential street, not a commercial street, and with all the right-of-ways. And I think that you should revisit this, because if there is another type of accident like Mr. Rott had, compounded by traffic on A1A, the city will be in greater risk of liability in the future. Now,
Sir, if you'll summarize, because your time is up.
thank you very much.
James Colley?
Hi, Commission, James Colley, 10 Versaggi Drive, St. Augustine, 32080. Thank you for seeing us tonight. My wife, Meg O'Connell, has some documentation we're going to share with you, but just a couple of points. Earlier it was stated that the agreement gives the developer the right to have a driveway. Our understanding of the way that agreement came out, and I think we reread it and this was validated, is that it gives them the right to ask for the driveway. It doesn't give them the right to have the driveway. That could, I think that's something we could settle by reading it, but our understanding when this happened was we would take a look at what's going on with the Verizon driveway, observe, how that's handled, and when he comes back in 2.5 years to ask for the right for the driveway, we would take that experience into account and determine whether or not he would in fact be given the driveway. That was the way, we were all here for this. Some of you were here, I think you were here, Commissioner. And that was our understanding of how this was going to happen. What we've heard recently is that it's guaranteed that he gets a driveway, and the question is, how do we do it? That was never our understanding. And I think we need to revisit the agreement and take a look at that to make certain that if in fact you're saying he gets the driveway regardless, fine, but I don't think that's what it says. I think we need to revisit that, first of all. Secondly, this is going to be a safety concern for the residents of Versaggi. We already have so much traffic going into that driveway, going into that area, and to our neighbor's point, there are people leaving Verizon constantly in an entrance. They're driving onto Versaggi. We've witnessed multiple near misses, and it's only a matter of time before the current situation creates an accident. And finally, my only other point is, with regard to the current entrance and exit from Alvin's Island, I get that you guys cross 2.5 lanes of traffic to make a left, but I've lived there for a number of years. I don't know of a single accident that's occurred there. When you're leaving there, you're going to be looking to your left to see whether or not there's a car coming, and if there is, you're not going to pull out. Anyway, thank you for your time. That's all I've got. Thank you.
I'm not sure why it keeps on beeping so many times.
Do we have any other speakers?
We do. Steve Edmonds.
I'm Steve Edmonds, 12412 San Jose Boulevard. I'm the owner of the property. And just to be clear, and to make sure that you all understand, which I'm sure you do, when I originally approached the city in order to get a permit to do the driveway, I requested a left-in only. And in further discussion with Mr. Tredick, started looking at it, and he felt like that it would be safer, as he presented tonight, to do a left-in and a right-out. I agreed to do that, and in exchange for that, like he mentioned, we would relocate the dumpster to make it more appealing for the residents that live back in Versaggi, to move it up closer to the building and put in a nice enclosure. I also agreed with the property owner that lives in the property right behind it. She was concerned with the current fencing to put in a new fence. One of the owners mentioned a UPS truck, which I agree totally. The UPS truck, if they stopped, if we had ingress and egress, which is what I wanted originally, they would have been able to turn into the parking lot and not be blocking the driveway. And then when we went to court and the court ruled in our favor and then we went to mediation, I had the choice of which driveway that we wanted to put in first. Did we want to do the one on Verizon or did we want to do the other one? So that was our choice. And also agree with pulling out of Verizon. Many cars, they pull out of there even though it's a right-in only, they pull out and go left. Again, if we had ingress and egress, we wouldn't have that problem. Thank you. If anybody has any questions at the end, feel free to holler at me.
Amanda Rodriguez.
Good evening. Amanda Rodriguez, 32 Versailles Drive. I am the neighbor right next to that business. So I was here in the last meeting. Mr. Tredick affirmed that I agreed to it. Actually, I was told that I had no choice, and therefore the agreement was of how do we do it, not if we do it. Now, my understanding after talking to other neighbors, that's not really where we are. So that's the parenthesis there. Now, I do actually see everybody that goes in and out of the neighborhood because I work right on that window. I raise a very important concern of mine. I see children going to school and coming on their bicycles. I see entire families walking and on their bicycles from other neighborhoods to go to the beach all the time. The number is high. I raised that to Mr. Tredick. I said, have you made a study to see what it will mean to the pedestrians? Because I know when these people are coming out of parking lots, they are on vacation. People that go to Albany are on vacation. They're distracted, they could just go out fast, and we're talking about a lot of people at risk. He said, no, we haven't done that. No, we need it. So while I appreciate that he is thinking about the cars that want to turn left, or thinking about what is maybe convenient for the business, he didn't hear anything about what it is about what is fair and really safe for the community, because that's used not just by the Versailles, but the entire community goes to the beach through that, bicycling or walking. Yes, there are cars that go in and turn around thinking that there's an entrance. Well, you put a sign and say no ingress to Alvis. You don't need to drive to create an entrance. You don't just kill an ant with a hammer. All you need is a sign, and they won't be going in. Now, people turn into Versailles at great speed because it's so busy. They just try to cut into traffic whenever they can. When you go in it at great speed, you're not just going to you just put on your brakes if there's somebody's waiting to turn left. And that's why they're also going into Versailles, and they stop because somebody's coming out of Verizon. So it will be very unsafe for the residents. We have one entrance and one exit. They already have two exits and one entrance for a business. What I foresee is that they want that because it's just going to be a much busier business later on.
And can you summarize for us, since your time is up?
It's just going to bring A1A that much closer to the neighborhood, and people are going to use it to go from shopping center to shopping center, and it's going to just bring another road in there, much more dangerous for everybody involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Hugo Connell? Oh, Mago, I'm so sorry.
My chicken scratch. Hi, I'm Meg O'Connell, 10 Versailles Drive. You guys all received my letter and signatures from the neighbors, so I won't go into detail because I know you guys have seen it, but Just want to reiterate, our two concerns are, of course, our safety. While Mr. Tredick brings up a good point, and in theory, it seems like a good idea, what is happening in practice at the top of Versailles is not working for anybody. The photos I sent were just photos that I've captured on my phone, so it's only a fraction of what I've seen when I've been able to get my phone out quick enough to take photos of what's happening at the top of the street, and the congestion and the illegally parked cars. It's a daily occurrence. The second issue is Mr. Edmonds is clearly not a good neighbor. You saw the pictures of the signs on the egress and the driveways that are falling apart. Clearly, those signs have been neglected and not maintained for multiple years. I would argue a dozen or more. So clearly, he is not concerned about the safety of the patrons going into his properties or the neighbors around them. He only does just enough to get whatever passed for his means to his end. And so I would ask that this commission consider what is actually happening at the top of Versailles versus what the theoretical idea of what should happen at Versailles. Thank you.
Actually, I'm not sure we received the pictures. Did you all Okay, all right.
I can show you if you'd like. Here's a picture of a FedEx truck parked outside of Verizon. Here's a picture of a car pulling out of Verizon, another car pulling out of Verizon, another car pulling out of Verizon. And I would argue that this is probably one of the most important photos because it shows congestion at the top of the street. Right here is where they're proposing the new driveway be. So if there's any congestion whatsoever, we have a complete block at the top of Versailles. If someone's pulling in at a high rate of speed, there's congestion and there will be block and backup on A1A. It's just not safe. I can leave these with you if you would like.
Yes, I think Beverly, you do. You've already got them?
I already have them.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Okay.
Michelle Cater?
Yes, good evening. My name's Michelle. I've lived at Versailles Drive for 25 years, and I've watched it become more and more dangerous, especially with the problem with Verizon. And I was here at the meetings to dispute that. I came back later and called a number of times to the city explaining that the sign that they have is not working, that the cars don't follow the signs because it's so small, and the cars are going whichever way they want. They're not following the safety signs. We have, excuse me, we have many, many new young families on Versailles Drive, which has added to the increase of children and pedestrians. I'm a teacher. I'm very concerned about the children riding their bikes. It's already been discussed, but before we have to just, instead of just discussing it, let's look at really doing something about it so one of these children aren't killed, and then the city will be in more of a problem than they're having now. When I am either leaving Versailles Drive or coming home, I have to, in order to cross onto Versailles Drive, listen to all the things that I have to watch for. Oncoming traffic, runners who are running on the sidewalk, jogging for exercise, bikers, children who are going to and from school, more traffic coming in and out of Verizon, more people going to and from the beach because we have a boardwalk, and now you want us to add Alvin's Island? Alvin's Island already mentioned that they have 2 ways to get in and out. That's sufficient. I go for a walk each and every morning at 8:30. I see Alvin's Island open. I see 2 cars or 3 cars coming of people who work there. At the most, coming back from my walk at 9:30, 10, and then coming home from work or going to work, I never see more than 8 cars at the most at Alvin's Island. Why do they need another opening or entrance or exit? There's never, except in the month of July. And I really don't think it's necessary, especially if we were to look at the traffic that they have going into their store.
Ma'am, if you'd summarize, please.
Yes, ma'am. I just want you to please really consider the safety of our community, the pedestrians. And yes, the traffic is a concern, but because of the growth of our community and right in that area between Publix and Winn-Dixie and all the other stores and walkers, it's for our community and our walkers, it's so much more of a consideration and factor for the pedestrians. Thank you.
Excuse me, ma'am. We need your address for the record. I don't believe you gave your address at the beginning.
I couldn't find where you were talking. Okay,
Over
I'm
here.
sorry.
It's my mess.
18 Versaggi Drive, I wrote it on the...
Yeah, we're just, the speakers have to present it as
Oh,
well.
I'm sorry,
That's fine.
18 Versaggi Drive, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no more speaker cards on this item. If there's anyone who wishes to come forward and speak and fill out a card later.
Mr. Tredick, do you have any further comments?
No, happy to answer questions. You know, I do take safety seriously, and I realize that the traffic is getting worse in the city. And, you know, when I see a situation that I think is not a safe solution, you know, that's why I brought this. The ingress, and I can defer to the attorney, my legal understanding is that they are allowed to have it because that was the settlement agreement. And if we do not permit that ingress, we're right back to the city getting litigated against and probably losing again because the Land Development Code allows 2 points of access. Right now, they do have 2 driveways, but one of them is a right out only onto A1A Beach Boulevard. So they really only have 1 ingress point. So and again, that would be an interpretation of the law, but my understanding is they are allowed a second access point, which is probably why they were successful the first time around. I wasn't here, I don't know all the details of that discussion. I think it makes it a safer condition. Yes, there will be cars coming out onto Versaggi. One thing I would like to say is that those photos, and I brought them, I have the photos, and I actually brought copies of them, and I was going to show them in case they weren't shown, because I think they prove the point that if you put something that is unusual out there, people don't obey it. If you put an ingress only, people are not going to obey it. They're going to be coming out that, and now you've got people coming out in a 14 or a 16-foot driveway with somebody trying to go in, you've got an accident. It is far better to have something that people are used to. Now, that being said, there may be some things we can do to tweak that design and make it a little more, still would be an egress. But one option, and I just sketched this up in Adobe. Let's get my bearings right. So, something that could be done, because I know there is concern about people darting across to Verizon. So if you could channel that egress out, again, the sidewalk still comes out for visibility purposes, but not allowing, and I don't know why this was put in there, but the way the agreement, settlement agreement was written, they didn't have a right to make a westbound right into Alvin's either. I don't know why it was in there. So you could tighten up this radius here. If you don't want cars coming westbound into Alvin's, you can tighten up this radius and really just, again, this is just something I sketched up today. It would have to be engineered by an engineer. It's just a possibility to make it a little more closely channel these cars out so they're not darting across. Now, is it going to 100% be effective? Probably not. There are going to be people that ignore the rules. And even if the signs, and I agree the signs should be fixed, and we're going to make sure that that's done so that they're more visible. But even with them visible, people are going to sometimes not obey them. And as far as the truck parking and the boat parking, there was a picture of a boat parked causing that traffic congestion. Shouldn't have been allowed. There's a hydrant right there. And we can add signs, we can put down yellow curb if we have to. I mean, there are things that can be done to reduce that probability. But if somebody's going to break the law, they're going to break the law, and enforcement is really the only thing that can be done to stop that. Just my views on it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. Mr. Tredick, on this design, it looks like if you're heading east, making that left on the north side, it would have that arc as opposed to the 90-degree angle. Am I looking at that correctly?
It has an arc. Two things about it. Again, I'm not trying to sell this. This was just something I sketched up today to just try to come up with some ideas that might work. It's a tighter radius, so it's not 90 degrees, but it's the minimum radius that would allow like a fire truck to get in there and make the turn without driving over the curb.
Would it require cars to slow down as much as a 90-degree turn would?
A little, not as much as a 90-degree turn.
Okay.
But more than the sweeping turn that was in that other option. It's also further from A1A, so being pushed to the east a little bit gives you a little bit of benefit there. I would not say this is my first choice. My first choice would be the normal shaped driveway.
Okay.
But this is something I was just trying to brainstorm to come up with some ideas. I actually sent it to the owner, Mr. Edmonds, because I didn't want to surprise him with something he hadn't seen. But it was just something that I thought as a possibility. And maybe we can tweak the design a little bit to make it a little better.
For overall safety concerns, which is your preferred?
My preferred is still the traditional driveway access. That would be my preferred.
Is there anything more that could be done from the standpoint of pedestrian safety?
Signage, we've moved the sidewalk out so that it's right by the road for more visibility. Originally, that was one of the things that I had him change. In an interim submittal, which I haven't shown, he had shown the sidewalk back here and then coming back, and I had him move it out down to the road so that it's visible. Because I was concerned, I want vehicles to come, if they're coming out, to not miss, not have a child not be seen or someone on a bike that's on the sidewalk, that sort of thing.
Right, and enable the pedestrian also
to put it out
see the
there in
traffic.
full view.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's a tricky
Makes sense.
situation. There are some poles out there that can't easily be moved. So there are not a lot of options as to where this can be. But again, my legal understanding is they have a right for the ingress.
And what is the section of the code that you referenced earlier, that the code provides 2 points of ingress
Brian,
as a requirement?
I'll defer to our code guru back there.
Oh, right, thank you.
Section 6.02.06 access. Keep in mind, this is designed for new developments. All proposed developments shall meet the following standards for vehicular access and circulation. Number of access points. All projects shall have access to a public right-of-way. Subsection 2, notwithstanding the provisions of paragraph 1 just read above, a non-residential development or multifamily residence development on a corner lot may be allowed 2 points of access. However, no more than one access should be onto an arterial.
And Mr. Law, do you know what the code was when the original construction was? Because, and a follow-up question to that would be, does the new code apply if the old code was different?
I don't have the code. I believe Alvin's Island in its creation was in the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yes.
If it was late 90s, I was still in the military somewhere. In the early 2000s, I wasn't back in government at the time. The ordinance, or the code doesn't, it only references when we did the sweeping change in 2018. So I'm going to begin to tell you what the code was at that time.
So the code that you just read to us is for new construction?
Yes, ma'am, it's for all proposed development. Basically, it just says you're cornered on 2 streets. You should be able to have access into, and keep in mind that the point to the north side is an egress only, as it sweeps, and we've all seen it as we make the merge where the A1As split apart.
Right. And Mr. Taylor, So I have two questions for you now. Thank you, Mr. Tredick, for all of your work on this. And I have a question for you before I ask Mr. Taylor. Do you know if there's been any traffic studies or a collection of reports of the accidents that have occurred at that intersection?
I do not have that information.
That might be handy to have, just if this comes to fruition, it may be helpful in how we implement signage, depending on what kind of accidents they were and where, how they occurred. Mr. Taylor, and I'm a little disappointed that we don't have the settlement agreement for us to be able to refer to so that we can read it for ourselves. But I'm sure that you have a solid understanding of what exactly was agreed to. And so I'm sure you talked to Mr. Tredick. Is that a consensus of what occurred?
Bill and I have talked at it at length. Neither of us were a party to the actual settlement. I will definitely stipulate that that is not the best well-written settlement statement I've ever seen. I wouldn't have written that. There's conflicting language in it. Some of the language says that the city has the right to review it, but you wouldn't even talk about it at all, but for the fact that some portion of it is guaranteed. And so at the very least, you'd be looking at a very high level of scrutiny if this were to be relitigated. They would want to say, well, why did we even talk about this? Why is this part of the settlement agreement? There is some language, and I think that language is if something had drastically changed, if there had been some drastic change to the code that had a real reason for it to be there. It basically suggests that they should be given that not the ingress but not the egress on that side. There's nothing legally a problem at all with us doing an ingress and egress. Because we're granting what was in the settlement statement by doing that. But as far as the language, it's conflicted, but you don't want a lawsuit on it. And my legal opinion is you'd lose the lawsuit. Because by putting that in there, they meant to say something. And they have some conflicting language that gives a little bit of legal wiggle room, because it does say, I pulled it up again to look at it.
This is on page 1 of the memo from Max, paragraph B.
Yes.
Is the pertinent paragraph, if you all want to take a look at it, or Mr. Taylor, if you want to refer to
I
any
can
of
read it, because I've got it pulled up.
Okay.
B, 2.5 years after the effective date, but not sooner, plaintiffs may submit an application for a curb cut request on the north side of Versaghi Drive on the east side of State Road A1A on the real property owned by the plaintiff, which shall be considered on its own merit. The north side curb cut shall be constructed in accordance with the plaintiff's most recent application for a curb cut at this location and may be designed to only allow traffic to enter from the west to the real property owned by the plaintiff on the north side of Versaghi. The city retains the right to review plaintiff's north side curb application to ensure it complies with the city's then existing code requirements, and the plaintiffs reserve the right to modify the most recent application to the extent appropriate to respond to the amendments or deletions of the city's applicable standards between the effective date of this amendment and the date of the application on the north side cut. Regardless of code or other modifications to applicable standards, plaintiffs shall not be entitled to a curb cut that would allow entry from the or exit to the east. Additionally, the plaintiffs, scroll down a little bit. The plaintiff shall erect and maintain signage indicating that no exit is permitted on the north side cut. The plaintiffs agree that this provision shall not be construed so as to require any future commission to grant a curb cut request on the north side of Versaghi to the extent that the application does not comply with the conditions set forth therein. So if it complies with our code, I read that to say that we are supposed to grant it to them. There's a lot of concessions in there, a lot of specifics about which directions can and cannot have access. That sounds to me to be fairly settled. Now, there's some language in there that puts flexibility in it and is not what you would normally want in a settlement, because it's very hard for parties that weren't there to say, what did you mean by that then?
Right. So I definitely understand that, but I don't think that we should succumb ourselves to the threat of a lawsuit when we don't even know what the code was. Now, the code that Mr. Law just read applies to new construction. So I think it would be helpful to know what the code was when that building was constructed, to see where we stand. Does that make sense? I mean,
I don't believe that's going to be the issue. Is not going to be on what the current code is or what the code was then. The issue is what was agreed upon 2.5 years ago.
Sure, it says that they may request. It doesn't say we have to grant it.
When they make the current request, then they have to comply with what the code is now.
Right.
And so that's why we're doing it. But they had some level of negotiation. They put this clause in here to mean something. If they didn't need to put the clause in there at all, if what they intended was for us to just look at an application, because the city has to look at every application that comes in anyway.
Sure.
So they put some constraints on the way we have to look at the application, and that's what we're having to do now, is apply our code. And if we don't have a valid reason to deny it under the code, then we have to approve that application, as long as it complies with what's in there. Or we open ourselves up to lawsuit. And I mean, and who knows, maybe we'd win it this time, but that wouldn't be what I would give you as a good guess at what will happen if we go before a judge.
That wouldn't be your advice.
No, it would not.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Mr. Tredick, if one side of Versaghi Drive allows ingress to the Verizon parking lot, no egress, and then the other side allows ingress and egress, that will just, you might as well give up the no egress off of Versaghi coming from the Verizon parking lot. We'll never be able to enforce that.
Well, I would respectfully say that they don't have a legal right to that driveway coming from Verizon to have an egress there. By this document, by the settlement agreement, we don't have to grant them that. Now,
Right.
may choose to someday if the situation warrants it, but they're not entitled to it. Just like they're not entitled to the egress from Alvin's. It's just safer, in my opinion.
Okay.
They're not entitled to it. And what Mr. Edmonds said is accurate. He didn't ask for this. I looked at what was there and said, I don't like it. It's not a safe situation. And so that's why we're here.
And do you happen to know where a school bus lets off children? Is it at the beginning of Versaghi Drive, or does it go a little bit further past could it go a little further past those two driveways so that children are not competing with cars in and out of those two parking lots? Is that a possibility?
I honestly don't know their drop-off pickup site. Maybe someone in the room knows that, but I don't
Okay,
have
that
that
could be
information.
something we could explore just for safety of children, past those
Yeah, I mean,
driveways.
That information's available. I can get it. I just don't
Okay.
have it tonight.
Okay.
I can tell you,
Yes, ma'am.
if I'm allowed.
Sure.
You need to go to a microphone.
Yeah, you have to come up here, though.
Okay. Please state your name again. Yes, my name's Michelle Cador. I live at 18 Versaghi Drive. The school bus does not let the children out right there, nor does the school bus pick children up right there.
Right there being where, ma'am?
Right in front of Verizon.
The beginning of Versaghi Drive?
Right, it does not. However, there are many children walking to and from the school bus pickup point.
Can you tell me where the school bus pickup point is and where they let children off? Is it past the driveways?
There's two buses that come down every day. Well, they go through the Versaghi Drive four times a day, every day.
Is it past those driveways we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's all I need to know.
Yes, but the children, to get to their pickup place, go past the driveway.
So,
I don't understand. You have said something conflicting here, that the school bus does not pick up or let off at the beginning of Versaghi Drive. It's
Not right
further.
there at the beginning, but they let children off at a different spot, but some of the children walk past that
Can you point to it on the
place.
map, maybe?
Yeah.
Maybe that would.
Oh, here's the sidewalk. You're saying children come from A1A and cross to get to the pickup point further to the east?
The pickup place is at the end, at the east side of Versaghi. But parents are coming into Versaghi to drop their children off there.
From where?
I don't know where they're coming.
There are no other residential access points there. I mean, you have Winn-Dixie across
I
the
know
street.
for a fact that there are many parents that drop off their children at the end of Versaghi. One of them being my daughter, and she comes from a different neighborhood. And the reason why parents do that is sometimes if they miss the bus at a different location, they go to the Versaghi.
But normally, the school bus for the children that reside in the Versaghi neighborhood, they are dropped off or picked up past the school bus. Is that
Yes.
correct?
East of the driveways. East of the driveways.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
But I was talking about pedestrians who pass there.
Okay.
I was just going to clarify, my kids ride the bus both to R.B. Hunt and to Sebastian and to St. Augustine High School. So all three buses go down Versaghi to the end. So it's off of A1A, 4-lane A1A. So it's down to the end of Versaghi. Because I can see the bus that goes down, then it turns
Okay.
around and then comes back and then goes down
Okay.
the boulevard.
Well,
to drop
that's
the other-
helpful. We know that at least in most cases, the children are not having to cross those driveways. Okay, great. I really need to limit this now to discussion. We've had public comment.
He's the applicant, Mayor.
Okay. Sure.
I just had a question, because I'm hearing all these vice mayors, the lawsuits. I didn't say anything about a lawsuit. I haven't even suggested a lawsuit. The only thing I did is ask for a left-in driveway, and I agreed, as trying to be a good neighbor, that I would move the dumpster down to the building, make it a nice dumpster site, that I would fence that property from the neighbors to try to make it nicer. The signage, I'm not sure what you're speaking of.
Mr. Edmonds,
that I'm
I
responsible
think we understand that.
Okay, so, I mean, I haven't threatened a lawsuit or even thought about a lawsuit, so, just so
Thank
we're
you.
all clear.
Thank you.
Mayor, while the applicant's up here, may I ask a question?
Sure,
'Cause I
sure.
did have a question.
Mr. Edmonds, if you'll stay here for the, please.
Mr. Edmonds, could you answer a couple of questions from the commission? Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Mr. Rhodes, I did have a question for you that I was going to ask later, but you're up at the mic. Why are you requesting this?
Just to give better access into the Alvin's Island property.
Is there an issue with the current access?
Well, no, I mean, but we are, for lack of a better word, it's our duty to be able to ask for and receive a left-in driveway. So that's what I'm doing.
Because it was part of the settlement.
Sure,
But
exactly.
I'm just wondering, is there a current ingress situation or problem with the current?
Well, right now, we just have the one ingress on A1A.
But it's not being problematic, or not, I'm just asking.
Well, and then quite honestly, we have quite a few customers that turn down Versaghi thinking that they can turn into Alvin's Island, realizing they can't, so then they turn in somebody's driveway or go down and turn around somewhere and come back out and then have to turn right on A1A and turn back into Alvin's Island. So this actually, I think, makes it better for the neighborhood, even though I don't understand why they don't understand that. So.
And just a follow-up, Have you looked at improving the current ingress? Is there any way to make that?
Yes,
more visible?
we've already addressed that with DOT, and back 5-6 years ago, we were able to increase the size of the driveway to make it a little bit easier, and so we did that already.
Thank you.
Mr. Tredick, the settlement agreement, and this may be for Mr. Taylor, the settlement agreement, although does not guarantee, there's a strong argument that the ingress would be allowed, but not the egress. And I believe that if you had on one side ingress and egress and the other side just ingress, it needs to be balanced. And then one side has got a curve and the other one a 90-degree. I'm trying to find a way to balance both sides and make it safe. And then the current code, Mr. Law, you would say under the current code that ingress would be allowed off the side street. Is that something that was shored up recently?
Yes, ma'am. I would say that the current code in Chapter 6 allows for, it says, the key word, though, if you read the code language, is may.
May,
And
okay.
if you'd like, I can reread that, if it would help. But it says
Okay,
may
if
grant.
you'll reread the current code for us again, that might help us.
Yes, ma'am. Uh-oh. All right. Where'd it go? I just need a minute.
Mr. Tredick, nothing is being proposed to change the access to the Verizon parking lot. That curve would still be there. It still would be ingress only.
That's correct.
And we need more enforcement and better signs.
I would agree that the signage needs to be improved.
Big ones.
And the
No exit.
enforcement also, yes.
Okay.
All right. You ready, Madam Mayor?
Yes, sir.
All right, section 6.02.06, access. All proposed development shall meet the following standards for vehicular access and circulation. Alpha, number of access points. All projects shall have access to a public right-of-way. Alpha 2, notwithstanding provisions in paragraph 1 above, a non-residential development or multifamily residential development on a corner lot may be allowed 2 points of access. However, no more than one access shall be onto an arterial. So,
Okay.
but there's also a section, alternative designs, where it talks about the city using its best judgment when impracticality occurs.
Mr. Tredick, if the commission would decide to prohibit the egress out of the parking lot, what would you suggest as far as ingress into Alvin's parking lot?
I think you.
Still require your 90-degree angle?
I think you could do an ingress only. It would not be as safe as a full driveway connection, but it is, you could tighten up the radius, you could keep it further from A1A Beach Boulevard, and it would work. The key, in my opinion, is to slow vehicles down before they turn in. So they come off the boulevard, they have time to decelerate. In fact, if it's a little bit further to the east, they will decelerate to make that turn. I have to have enough radius, though, since that's going to be an access point for larger trucks to get in there, like a fire truck or something like that, or a garbage truck or something like that.
Or a school bus.
No, I'm talking about into Alvin's. A vehicle has to be able to get in there for fire protection. Now, in theory, it could get in from the front, so maybe that's something that we could tighten up that radius a little more even. But so by tightening up that radius to the left end, we could make it a little better. It's still not going to be as safe, in my opinion, as a full driveway, because with that vehicle coming out, you've got to make that turn around it. It's just Still, again, I go back to what people expect. It's a more traditional design. It's what people don't get confused at when they see a traditional driveway. They see something a little odd, they're not necessarily going to follow it. If you do that ingress only, tighten up the radius, you will almost certainly still have some people go the other way, come out. Because they can't get out or because they want to go south, they're going to violate the signs even though they're plain as day right in front of them, do not enter. They're going to think they can get away with it. Not everyone, but some, and they're going to come out. And that's when you get into the risk of conflicts. So an inbound versus an outbound. So the safest is still a full driveway, but can we make something work that's somewhere in between possibly?
What about cameras?
In what capacity to?
You know, a sign that says no egress, cameras are present.
I don't
Cameras.
believe it would be enforceable for a ticket, though.
Okay, all right. For purposes of moving this along, I'm going to suggest the commissioners think about ingress only, improving the signs, big ones, and just beefing up the no egress, just to cut down on the number of cars. And so, any commissioner would like to comment or add to that, or?
I've got a question.
Okay.
That's going to maybe back us up, and I apologize for
No,
that.
that's all right.
I'm wondering why this is in front of us. What is our normal, I'll ask it another way, what is our normal procedure for an approval of an application for ingress and egress? I don't remember this kind of stuff coming before a commission before. What is the normal process, and why are we looking at this level?
So, and Brian might be able to help a little bit with the P&Z side. This originally went to the P&Z and was approved by the P&Z, and then it was appealed, I believe, and then it was denied by the commission. So it probably would have been handled in a development phase. If that had not been denied by the commission, it would never have come to the commission. It would have been, if it hadn't been, and correct me if I'm wrong again, if it had not been appealed, it probably never would have come to the commission and it wouldn't be an issue. Because the neighborhood was resistant to it and against it, it got appealed and came to the commission, and then it started that whole chain of events. So yeah, on most developments, you would never see something like this.
So would a new application for this ingress, would it follow that same course? Would it go through P&Z and then either does it go through the same review process that you just described that the initial development went through?
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Brian on that a little bit about a new development.
I would agree that in today's world, if we were to develop a new commercial building, as we've seen before with major developments that come in front of the commission, access points are determined. We contact the Department of Transportation at the county. We get all kinds of stuff done. In this case, given its contentious nature, I believe it was the Public Works Director's concern that brings it to the commission to make the decision. So it doesn't fall on the individual department head, but it also gives a platform for the residents of that area to come to the commission and have another avenue to speak their concerns. But traditionally, this would be handled in development. Now, keep in mind, your code under major development does have I like to call it a loophole. It basically says, of course, this book is written for me, but in this case, it doesn't really apply per se, because this is public property we're dealing with. It does say in the event of a contentious, if the building official deems something contentious, it could automatically be labeled as a major development. Whereas if it was under 3,000 square feet, that development would stop at the planning and zoning. By me saying something is contentious, it automatically brings it to the commission. So in this case, this is a use of the city's right-of-way. The city owns the property. It's under the control of the Public Works Director, but given its contentious nature, I think the Public Works Director made the right call.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I brought this back to the commission was because of the fact that I was asking them to put in something more than they had a right to ask for. And so the former commission that was here at the time approved a settlement agreement, which I think, from my opinion, did not necessarily create the safest driveway situation, and so that's why I'm here.
No,
I did not want to go against the wishes of prior commission without
To me, it's, the
talking
settlement
to
agreement says that there'll be an application for it, and here we are, there's an application. I'm just wondering if the application's gone through the proper process. Does it still need to go through planning and zoning? Maybe we're kind of cutting ahead and trying to shorten the process by getting it to us first. But I just found it unusual that we're addressing it before planning and zoning and.
Well, in a normal case, I would probably approve a driveway connection if it met the code. And a normal site plan probably wouldn't even have to go to planning and zoning. If they're coming in for a driveway, we'd do a driveway connection permit, it meets the code, I'd issue a permit. But because of the history on that, that's not where we are today.
So with the application that's in front of us, you feel it meets the code, and your recommendation is what at this point?
My recommendation is a left in and a right out. We can continue to work with the owner to tweak the design to make it the most effective that it can be and the safest that it can be, but I would recommend allowing the right turn out.
I have another question that may just throw this into another loophole. Has there been any consideration to make another, is an ingress the way you get into the property?
Correct.
Okay. Has there been any consideration to put an ingress at where the current other egress is?
It really wouldn't work. There are two existing driveways that are there, and I think they might be in one of these other sketches. The two other driveways are there. This is a right turn out only.
Right.
It merges with the lane going northbound. So there's no opportunity there for an inbound lane, an ingress lane. This already has an ingress, and it has also a right out. So there really is no other opportunity for a second access point. The only place is Versaghi. Which I believe is why it was settled upon that would be allowed, because that is really the only other choice for second access.
Ma'am, public comment is finished now. We need to let the commissioners talk about this respectfully. Any further comment by Commissioner Rumwell? Do you have some thoughts about
I think
allowing the ingress and
I mean,
egress?
safety needs to be important. I think that's a big concern. I think there's more to just the driveway, though. I think we need, as the city, to put some no parking signs down Versaghi, because I think that there's a problem on Versaghi Road with people parking, which is going to back up into A1A. So I think, notwithstanding the driveways, I think we have a bigger issue on top of the driveways. I'm good either way. I mean, I'm going to take the recommendation depending on the way I vote, but I'm going to listen to what my Public Works Director is going to say. And if he feels that it's a safer situation, I just want to make sure that we take care of the problem, which seems to be more than just the driveways. And so that's kind of where I'm standing at right now.
Okay, Commissioner George?
Yeah, I completely agree with everything Commissioner Rummel just said. I think that the city needs to step up and put no standing, no parking signs. The owner needs to abide by the requirements to have signage on his property, but we need to also, address those enforcement issues on the portions of the streets that are our responsibility. We've had expert testimony, our experts telling us here that there's an entitlement to the 2 points of entry, and that the safest design all around is the 90-degree turn. That is a big, consideration for me. The 90-degree turn, slowing down the traffic, I think, is the biggest element there of import. And then also the ingress, egress is also being recommended. I'm having a hard time. I don't see any basis legally for deviating from that recommendation. What we have heard consistently from the public testimony, not only at this meeting, but at all prior meetings, is that what it is now isn't working. The same methodology that has been implemented over all these years has not been working, and it's still not working. You know, I'm not suggesting that we experiment with something new because I really feel legally we don't have a choice. But maybe, our engineers are telling us this will alleviate a lot of those concerns. So, if there is a way for people to get off Versaghi sooner, I would think that's going to help out the neighborhood.
What do you think about my concern about if you allow the egress off the north side of Versaghi, then you'll have more egress out of the Verizon side. You'll never be able to enforce that. What do you think there?
Yeah, I mean, so the design on the south side is a problem. So I think we should not recreate a problem on the north side. I think inherently having an intersection, a four-way intersection is, as long as it's designed appropriately and is at the right location, it's not any more or less dangerous than the alternative, given, that's my opinion, that's what the experts are telling us, that's what the engineers are telling us. I get the concept that, well, will that increase traffic because they can go this way? I don't see how that would draw more traffic. Because people either want to get into those parking lots or not. If they're going to cross a road and there's a stop sign that says they have to stop, they're going to stop, they're going to look, just like they do anywhere else. You're always going to have risk with vehicles. If a parent is dropping their child off at the corner of State Road A1A and Versaghi for them to walk down to the east end, they need to change that approach. They need to drive the child to the east side. So, we have that same design on Ocean Trace. And there have not been any issues that the police department has ever brought to our attention. As far as I recall, the Chief Hardwick was here during the last iteration. We really need to have those police reports on presentations like this, but it has not, in my term, been brought to my attention of, any issues there. So it's a difficult decision. We're here to represent the people, but we also have to protect property rights because the people have property rights too. And this owner is one of our people just as well as the residents are.
Sir, sir, I'm sorry.
Because of all of these conflicts, I must, defer to the expert, to the engineer as to what is the most safe option. I don't feel like I have any other choice.
Okay, any further comments by Commissioner Rumwell or Vice Mayor?
No, I think to reiterate what Commissioner George said is that, I'm leaning on the experts. I think regardless, we've seen photos tonight that people are coming in and out of Verizon anyways. And so I don't think that that's going to change if we say you can't, if there's no egress, I don't know if there's a silver bullet. I think the only thing that we can do is protect the integrity of the neighborhood, which will help by people not turning down Versaghi thinking that there's an entrance, drive through their neighborhood, continue to drive through the neighborhood, turn back around, and then come back out. And then I think the other thing is for the property of the owner of the commercial property, he's entitled. That happened before I was on the board and before Mr. Tredick and I think Mr. Samore and probably Commissioner Koska. I don't think that he would sue, but I don't want to take that risk. I don't want to take that I just feel that I'm leaning on what Mr. Tredick is saying as something that we should really consider. Again, I'm leaning on the expert.
Mr. Tredick, the egress off of the Verizon parking lot, that parking lot is a lot more narrow. Getting in is one thing, but two-way traffic on that, it would be more difficult than it is on the north side, correct?
There's definitely challenges with it. I haven't done a detailed analysis of it, so I can't really speak too in-depth at it, but that's a bad driveway. There's no doubt about it. I don't know that impacts the one across Versaghi so much. you know, the nice thing about that being a right-in, even people do ignore it and come out there, and that's a problem, but it's geometrically located. You know, you come in and you sweep in and you turn into that site at Verizon, so it works. My main concern with the other one is you're crossing traffic, as I said earlier.
Right,
It's
right. Your presentation was really good as far as your documentation and reasoning on the ingress and egress off the north side.
I just don't know, I mean, I can't say for sure, but I don't know that people are egressing from Alvin's, and not everyone will. I mean, a lot of people that are going up A1A Beach Boulevard, people that are going to go north on A1A, they're probably still going to go out the same way they do now. But for the few that are wanting to go south, it will make it easier for them. But I don't know that that's going to do much related to Verizon. Those people coming out Verizon are going to continue to disobey those signs, even if
We should try to beef up the no egress coming out of Verizon.
Well, I think that we probably should look at that whole area, including Verizon, and see what the best geometry is for that. I know that the applicant would probably love that, but they're not entitled to that, and so that's why I didn't bring it to you.
Well, safety first, right? And then
Yes, first.
we take a look at the settlement agreement and see, and our current code. So with that being said, and we've discussed, would anyone like to make a motion on what we should do on the applicant's request and on this?
I can try. I mean, I guess this does require a motion. The staff is asking us for a motion. Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the design as recommended by our Public Works Director, which provides for a 90-degree ingress north from Versaghi and a 90-degree egress onto the heading west on Versaghi.
Would you allow an addition that we beef up the signs, Public Works works out with the applicant and what the city needs to do for signs on how traffic should flow?
Absolutely. That's the intent of the motion. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
I'd second that motion.
All right. We've got a motion on the floor and a second. So Beverly, roll call vote, please.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner George?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Casca?
No.
Commissioner Samora?
Yes.
Commissioner Romwa?
Yes.
Mayor Rainville?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
Thank you for the residents on coming out, and just please keep us informed on how this works out, and we hope it'll...
Sure, you want to go till 10 o'clock?
When we tried to tell you about
Oh, goodness.
you have
Goodness.
any studies on
All right, everybody.
You only care about your cars.
That's enough.
Okay, we'll see. They can't even go south anyway, they still have to go north.
Ma'am, you need to exit the building, please. All right. Next item is ordinance number 2015.
Yes, ma'am. Last month, we saw 4 code changes to amend the land development code regarding occupancy permits, impervious surface coverage, unsafe buildings, and code enforcement board members and time. Last month, you had the city attorney draft an ordinance, so this is it. Nothing has changed from last month.
Okay, we've seen this again before, and so any questions on this item? If not, I'll make public comment.
I have no cards on this item.
And we need to read the ordinance.
All right.
Just the heading.
Ordinance number 2015, an ordinance in the city of St. Augustine Beach, Florida, making findings of fact, amending the city's land development regulations, sections 6.07.10, 6.01.02, 6.07.07, 11.03.02, and 11.03.04, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict, providing for codification, and providing an immediate effective date.
All right, we are missing a commissioner, but I think we can still vote on this. I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number 20-15.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing no opposition or further questions, ordinance number 20-15 is approved. Thank you, Mr. Law. The next item is item number, we're skipping item number 5.
Yes, that'll be your next meeting.
Okay, and use of city meeting rooms, item number 6.
I know we're skipping number 5, but I was just really surprised at the state, because this really kind of stomps on the home rule, and I'm wondering if the League of Cities has a position on this. Does anybody know?
I'm not sure, ma'am.
I think this came so fast that the Florida League of Cities really didn't have a lot of time to react to it.
It's buried in about a 105-page bill. It's a tiny section. I remember the League of Cities opposed it because I sent a letter stating the city's support of opposing it because it was against home rule.
Right. And it wasn't part of the League of Cities memorandums or voting or anything like that Commissioner Koska, you took part in this year.
Yeah, no, it wasn't mentioned at all. Just disappointed. Thank you.
All right, use of city meeting rooms.
Yes, this was carried over from your meeting last time. We are at this point, we're still not letting the public use the rooms because of obvious reasons, and I'm not suggesting we begin allowing them to use it considering the current conditions. However, this proposal to you would allow you to set some policies in place so when the virus does abate, we could begin allowing the public rather to use the rooms again. And our proposal here is that we would open the rooms to the public for a very limited number of hours during the day, from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. and then from 11:30 a.m. to 2 p.m. because the gaps then allow us to sanitize the rooms between uses. Second suggestion is that we would charge the people. We don't charge anyone for using the room unless they are a group that's not based in our city or they're using the room for some private for-profit purpose. So the charge we're recommending, and this is for cleaning only, this is not for the electricity and other costs that may be associated with the room use. But Building C, which is the small building, would be $30 per meeting, and City Hall meeting room across the corridor here would be $50. And if you approve these policies, then we would put them in a formal resolution to amend your policies and procedures manual.
Max, have you been able to talk to AA about the $30 charge to cover our cleaning?
No, ma'am, I've not seen any representatives from AA at all.
Okay.
In any event, we still would have to clean the room when they used it. Even if you didn't charge anybody anything, we would still have to clean the room in the interest of public safety.
Right.
And of course, we're limiting, as we note on page B, no more than 9 persons in Building C and no more than 24 persons in the room across the hall. Some of the AA groups have many more people than 24. They pack the room across the hall, so they might not even meet here anymore.
Okay.
Some of the AA groups are smaller. It probably would make it difficult for them to use the room if we charge.
Okay, yes, I understand. All right, and this is going to be an interim policy with maybe a
Yes.
sunset that we could consider later in 2021 or beginning of 2022?
Yes.
Okay.
Or at this point, you could decide you don't want to do anything because of the pandemic's increasing ferocity and the number of people being affected, that opening the rooms at this point for any purpose for the public is simply not good policy. And just leave the status quo remain.
Do we have any public speakers on this item?
We do. Mr. Nicholas Binder.
Nicholas Binder, 232 Big Magnolia Court, St. Augustine Beach, Florida, 32080. Just clarity, the hours, I gather, are Monday through Friday and not on the weekend, because many homeowners associations will have their quarterly or annual meetings on a weekend versus during the working day. So I would ask for consideration, at least for Saturday, for that consideration, and hopefully when everything goes better, we can have more relaxation on time. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Bender brings up a good point. We do have a weekend public works worker. He cleans the restrooms at A Street and 10th Street. And if a group would meet on a Saturday in the time that that person is here, not Saturday evening, for example, because that would mean overtime for the employee, but say during his normal work hours, which are usually 7 to 3:30. Is that correct, Bill, on a Saturday?
Actually, a little less than 3:30 on a Saturday. We typically, right now, we're working a 6-hour shift.
Okay. So it would be like 7 to 1 p.m.
Okay.
But that's doable as long as the group was meeting during that time frame. So after they left, then the worker would come in with his spraying device and clean down the room.
Any further public comment? Vice Mayor, no further public comment?
No, I have no more cards on this item.
All right. Commissioners, questions for Mr. Royal?
I did have a question. I mean, it's as between paragraph 3 and 4 and 10, it seems to be consistency about between 8 and 2, but then what does paragraph 4 say? You only have these 2 blocks, 8 to 10 and 11:30 to 2. Neither one of them accommodate even the 4-hour time block. Maybe that's a typo?
You're looking at, on page B,
Yeah, B, paragraph 4, carrying over to the top of C. Says the only 2 time blocks are 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. or 11:30 a.m. to 2 p.m.
yes.
But neither of those are 4 hours, and you're proposing 4-hour time slots. I mean, isn't
Okay.
it really 8 to 10, 8 to
Yeah.
2? It's not like you have to have a break between 10 and 11:30.
Yes.
Okay,
That's, you pointed out something correct, yeah.
okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
We just kind of remove paragraph 4 in total.
Yeah.
Commissioners, do you think we should open up the meeting rooms now or wait until later? Do we move forward on this or leave it as is?
I mean, I think that it's fine to adopt a policy, so we have it when it's appropriate to utilize it. But, I mean, we have to protect our staff. We're still looking at 100 people per day adding to the list in our county alone, consistently over more than the last week.
Right now, the meeting rooms are not available for use, is that
Not
correct?
at all.
Not at all.
It's simply too risky.
If we adopt this, I would recommend that it would be an effective date of February 1. I'm not even sure that's a good date, but.
We could re-examine it then.
We are getting requests on occasion. In my office, people come in and say, "Are there rooms available?" And we have to say no.
You know what the AA groups are doing?
No, ma'am, I don't. I've not seen any representatives. Have any been in Beverly that you've seen?
There's been one or two that come in, but they obviously are meeting somewhere. They're not, it's not a great urgency. My only worry is that you have so many people, especially a court-provided AA group. They have to come in and there's sometimes 60 people in there, and I don't think it's safe.
No, we wouldn't allow a group of 60 people.
If you say no to one, you're going to have to say no to all of them, and I wouldn't do that during this kind of pandemic yet. It's increasing.
I'm not sure it's time to open up the meeting rooms quite yet.
Okay, what we can do, keep the policy in the back burner, on the back burner, and at the appropriate time, we can bring them back.
Well, is there any harm in approving the policy and putting off the date of start?
No, there's no harm in that.
Why don't we do that?
Yeah.
We're here, we've got it in front of us, let's do it.
Okay.
Okay, what I can do is prepare a resolution for the next meeting
Okay.
to formalize it, and we'll just leave, well, we can put in some language about opening it up upon review by the city staff in light of CDC guidelines or county health department guidelines.
Okay, so
Something like
that's nothing, guidance is enough, we don't need
Yeah.
to have a motion or
No,
anything
ma'am.
like that? Okay, all right, sounds good. Next item on the agenda is the city manager's annual performance review, and Max has provided a review, because he and I talked, and I'm used to people doing their review first, and then the manager can comment and they can discuss, and it's my understanding that I have not had a meeting with Max on his review, and I'm not prepared tonight to comment on this, but if any commissioner would like to comment tonight, I'll open it up for that, but I would encourage every commissioner to read this and to respond in writing on the self-evaluation. Is there any other procedure which you as a commission would prefer to take on this one?
Really surprised at this deviation from what we're all appointed and assigned to do by the city charter. It doesn't ever mention that the city manager does a self-evaluation. It says that the commissioners shall do an evaluation of the police chief and the city manager. I was really quite surprised.
Well, I think Vice Mayor, what he did was give us some information. This is information only, meant to be the substitute for a written evaluation that we each do. And this could be a starting point for the written evaluation and Beverly has given us a form, and this may be to encourage us to do the written evaluation either in a Word document like this or in using the form that she gave us. So I don't think it's a substitute for that written evaluation required by the charter. Okay, any further comments by commissioners? Anyone want to comment on this tonight?
So we should go ahead and do a review, set up a meeting with Max, and use the form that we've been using? The format
I
that we've
would
been
think
using?
so,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, to me, this is kind of like the old 360-degree, where you evaluate yourself, and you evaluate yourself with those that you report to, and compare notes.
Right. Any other comments? Okay, well, I'd encourage all the commissioners to do the annual performance review as soon as you can. All right, next is first reading of ordinance 2017 to adopt the Florida Building Code. Mr. Law.
Yes, ma'am. This is the once in 3 years you actually see me talk about a building department issue, not a zoning. Every 3 years, Florida Building Code is amended. It's a directive from the state. It's written right in the statutes. When I first got here, and everybody except for Mr. Rumwell was on the commission, you saw me adopt one at the beginning of 2018. The code is set to take effect the beginning of January. So as always, we take the standardized one from the Building Officials Association of Florida. They've already vetted theirs. That's the gray text you see in the two-column format. The white text can't be changed. That is the state requirement. Red are the changes I've made for site-specific, just as we did 3 years ago. We're going to do it again with the same exceptions. There has been some significant changes to the state law regarding building officials and their authority. So all that is picked up in the new model code. The big changes we had last time, or exceptions, was 105.2 of the building code. That is on page 8. And there we talk about fences and sheds. We bring in the A1A Beach Boulevard. But the same principles, letting your constituents work on their houses without building department interference for small repairs, such as a tree limb through a roof to replace some shingles, some siding. And this is in line with St. Johns County also. So it helps promote uniformity among the jurisdictions. The one thing I have taken out of the code is on number 7, cabinets and countertops. The county is preparing to do that, as I understand it. The intent of the code, in my opinion, was to allow a direct replacement of cabinets. Unfortunately, as we modify buildings to the current theory, we want that open design. We end up taking out walls. We had one gentleman cut a engineered concrete floor in a condominium not too long ago. We had to bring in engineers to repair it. That's what happens if you do cabinets and countertops without permitting. So this is pretty standard. Other than that, there's minor changes, but as you see, and they're in red. Now, what I presented you in the beginning of the meeting is the ordinance with the way the code will appear in the city code. So it does help a lot of people read it who aren't used to reading a two-format code. And this is what will be posted on our webpage if adopted.
And then what was handed out tonight is the actual ordinance.
Yes, ma'am, that's the ordinance with the code, not in a two-page code format,
Okay.
or a two-column. And keep in mind, this will not go to the Planning and Zoning Board, as it doesn't affect zoning. This is a state building code issue.
So what is required of us?
You have to adopt it, and then if the city does see fit to adopt it as written, it'll be sent to the Florida Building Commission.
So, every 3 years, the code is updated.
Yes, since the inception of the Florida Building Code in 2001, it was released in 2002, it's hit its mark except for one cycle. At that point, we shifted to editions instead of years.
Okay. And because you might make some changes, or do you? You want to do this every 3 years rather than say we adopt the Florida Building Code as amended?
You need to adopt every third year once it comes out, and my recommendation is always use the Building Officials Association of Florida model code.
Okay. but not do something automatic, just,
No, ma'am, every 3 years you need to do
Every
it. It's
3
just
years
like
you
your
need to do
flood
it, okay.
ordinance, it must be adopted by the local government.
okay, all right. Questions from Mr. Law?
I have a question about the fences section you pointed out. It says, building permits aren't required for fences of all materials other than masonry over 6 feet in height and not located on A1A Beach Boulevard right-of-way boundary. Are we removing any height restrictions that we previously had?
The problem is the Florida Building Code says 7 feet is what it's standard. Unfortunately, that doesn't work with the City of St. Augustine Beach zoning code because 8 foot is the predominant.
Yes.
So basically, I took the St. Johns County exception, and their exception is what's written with the exception of obviously A1A Beach Boulevard.
So we're not eliminating our allowance of 8 feet, and we're not saying you can have a 20-foot fence either by this language? You're
No,
saying
ma'am,
there's another section of the
this code is intertwined with the zoning code.
Gotcha.
What the Florida Building Commission is saying is we really don't want to regulate people's fences that you buy the pickets at Home Depot. So,
I understand now.
Masonry, we care a little bit more about, because over 6 feet tall, it becomes an issue. We're probably going to ask for engineering for the footer.
Okay,
Very rare that we see those, though.
okay.
Quick question on the wording of that. It's almost like a double negative. 105.2 is work exempt from permit, so should that number 2 for fences still kind of keep the same verbiage that was in the original that you crossed out? Not over 7 feet? Should it be not over 6 feet?
No.
No?
Basically, I have to exempt what your zoning code, because we're too far gone. I can't change the code to restrict 8-foot fences. So if you read it, fences of all materials are exempt from code, or exempt from permitting, other than masonry.
Other than, okay.
So it's just the way you got to have the deflection in your voice. I had the same question 5 or 6 years ago at the county.
I have another question. In that same section where subparagraph 7 about work not requiring a permit, number 7, it strikes cabinets and countertops. Is that now requiring a permit for installation of cabinets?
Yes, ma'am, they currently do under your current building code. We exempted it in the beginning of 2018 because the intent, like I said earlier, the intent is for a direct replacement level 1. The plumbing contractor would come and get their permit, electrician. Well, we run more and more into structural issues being done as they cut walls down without bearing capacity evaluations. But basically with our plethora of condominiums here, we get into a lot of fire rating issues. So we do issue permits on it.
So currently in St. Augustine Beach, you need a permit for doing countertops?
We've never issued a permit for a countertop alone. It's usually cabins and countertops as a whole. In the 7 or so years I've been doing this in local government, I've never issued a permit for a cabinet or countertop replacement.
Is that something we need to be concerned about, having clarity in writing?
No, because a countertop, if you don't replace the cabinets, would eventually everything would have to be just like it is the sink and all that. So then your plumbing will just reconnect right back. You wouldn't be doing a solvent cemented plumbing connection. It would all be slip joints.
Okay, but we are currently permitting for the combo of cabinets and countertops.
We don't issue a whole lot of them. Like I said, the big concern is condominiums, duplexes, anything with fire-rated assemblies.
Okay.
So if we're adopting the Florida Building Code, but retaining unto St. Augustine Beach the ability to impose stricter requirements,
The gray is actually BOAF recommendations. The shaded gray. The white is actually the state mandate.
okay,
The red is me. Like I said, nothing in the work exempt from permits has changed from the last cycle I think I might have wrote in flagpoles less than 35 feet in height, because that seems to be an issue.
In the ordinance that we're adopting, in the ordinance.
Let me get the
that
ordinance.
Should there be something in the ordinance that says the adoption of the code is subject to our ordinance, or?
The reason this is different than last time is the previous attorney just adopted it, had the ordinance, he changed the city code just by reference. Well, the fact is he referenced a model administrative code that was changed, which is why the city attorney is now providing the 30 or 40 pages of the entire code. So this, in theory, would become the city's building code. It would be included in your city code in the Chapter 6. But that's the logic of not adopting it by reference, by adopting the actual code. So this is the City of St. Augustine Beaches code, and it's beyond reproach.
Maybe a simpler way to say it is that the model building code makes some of it that is concrete. Everything in white has to be adopted. Everything in gray allows the building official to review it and make changes that would comply with the local codes. And that's what Brian has done, is he's gone through and he's tried to go through the building code and change the small parts that would be more clear in the City of St. Augustine Beach. But by doing that, you cannot just adopt the model code. You have to actually adopt the whole code and make the small changes that Brian wanted to do to comply with the rest of our codes that are currently in place.
And that's what this document does, ordinance 20-.
Correct. It adopts the entire model code, but then we have to make small amendments that Brian suggested to comply with our existing code and to make it work right. And the gray parts are the only parts he's amended, and so that's where the model code looks to us to make those changes to comply.
And just for a little history, when we get a model code from the BOAF, they kind of dumb it down for us. They say, insert community standard here, which is why you see the 2018 International Property Maintenance Code still here. We adopted that right out of the gates when it was first released last cycle. But as the new one's not out yet, it seems prevalent to keep this one for another 3 years. It works good. It's a good code. There were a lot of changes last time that are gone now. Last year, the governor passed a law saying I can't limit permits to people with expired permits over 6, blah, 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 blah. So obviously, we comply with the governor. Other than that, it's pretty boilerplate. It's just standardized code.
Okay.
No big changes to the city as far as restrictions.
Okay. Any public comment on this one?
I have no speaker cards on this item.
Any further questions by anybody? All right, we're ready to read the ordinance, just the heading.
I don't know if it's in my book.
I can read it real fast.
Yeah.
Ordinance number 20-blank. An ordinance of the City of St. Augustine Beach, Florida, making findings of fact, adopting the Florida Model Building Code with minor changes to the city's code, repealing Article 1, Section 6-4, and repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict, providing for codification and providing an immediate effective date.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve the ordinance adopting the Florida Model Building Code.
Second?
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed or further questions? Hearing none, the ordinance is adopted.
I think we'll have one more next month, a second. So this is the first stage, it takes 2 approvals.
Okay.
Normally it takes 3, but this isn't a change to land development code.
Okay, all right. Let's see, now we are, no new business. We are ready for staff comments. Mr. Royal, I'll begin with you.
Chief Carswell said his regrets that he couldn't be here, but he had some other things he needed to attend to in the police world. Of course, we have an officer here representing the department. I do want to acknowledge and thank the Vice Mayor Koska for her service to the city over 4 years. And on behalf of the staff, extend best wishes to her and to the rest of you for Christmas and New Year's. And to remind you that the night market is going to be held this Saturday at the Pier Park, one of our events. And after that will be the final night walk on December 19th. The first night walk, I thought, went very well. I saw the mayor was there. I don't know if anyone else attended, but there were a few artists here and there were some crowds of people looking at their artwork, and I hope buying. It turned out pretty well. Thank you.
All right, our finance director.
Just to reiterate what Max said, we have a couple of upcoming events. We have our night market this weekend, 4 to 8:30, I believe. And then the following Saturday is our final art walk. First one was very successful. We're receiving very positive feedback on the events. We hope to have a full report to the commission at the February meeting so that we can gather all of the information from our businesses and our partners for both the art walk and the night market. Everything else seems to be going smoothly, knock on wood. I hate to say that too loudly, but we're making progress with our budget, seem to be holding it steady, and finalizing some purchases this quarter for equipment that was needed and budgeted for. And other than that, happy holidays.
Patty, could you give an update on the state revenues and how they're looking as they're coming in?
So our state revenues seem to have leveled off to where they were prior to COVID. I hesitate to say that too loudly because I don't want it to take a nosedive. But I did see the numbers coming back up to an elevation that we were accustomed to prior to. Everything took a nosedive. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Law.
In case nobody's been by the embassy from the east side, they have commenced work on the southeast parking lot. That is nearing its completion stage, where they're putting in the plugs. I would anticipate at the end of this week or next week, the building permit for phase 2 of the embassy suites will be issued, as they've been in plan review for several months.
When you talked to the manager of the Embassy Suites, I tried to stop by there on our art walk, and they were just really busy. Extend my appreciation and our appreciation of what they did on the lights, especially the palm trees, because we really asked for that, and they came through flying colors for us.
Good.
With those palm trees, the way they did those.
I'll be
Really,
there.
really
I'll be there
nice.
tomorrow morning for
Okay.
a gas inspection.
I left my card, but they were really busy that night. So, Mr. Tredick.
Only that RFQ responses are due in tomorrow for Ocean Walk, so we'll see how many we get. As of now, one has sent in a package. I'm hoping some local ones will drop some packages off in the morning. It's due at 3 tomorrow afternoon, so after we get them in, we'll start the review process and bring it back to the commission.
Any drafts of our vulnerability study yet? That's due in January?
Not yet.
Okay.
That is coming, though.
Do you feel like they're on time?
Yes, they are on time.
Okay, great. And our attorney, Mr. Taylor?
I have one announcement. The state of Florida over the summer or in the spring session passed a fireworks law that trumps our local fireworks ordinances for 3 days of the year. So for New Year's Day and New Year's Eve and the 4th of July, our local limits on fireworks are not in place, and so we have to look to the state's guidelines on what's appropriate and what's usable and what's not. I had talked with Commander Ashlock before he left, and he was aware of that, and that we wouldn't enforce during those days, and so I just letting everybody know that that will be something to look forward to, either or be disappointed by, depending on how you want to look at fireworks and what time of day they might go off. But so I just put that announcement out there so that people know.
Do you know if there's any time restrictions on those?
No, but there can be other, like our noise ordinance has time built into it, so you still shouldn't be firing off in violation of the noise ordinance, even though the fireworks themselves are allowed. The noise ordinance would trump the fireworks ordinance.
So there shouldn't be fireworks at 2 o'clock in the morning?
Correct.
I thought, is our noise ordinance that we have currently enforceable?
I have not reviewed our noise ordinance to know whether it is.
I think before you came on, there had been some changes which left that question open and unresolved, so you may want to look at that.
Great.
And then, is that change from the state regarding fireworks going to result in a modification to our code?
It could. I don't know that you want to, at this point, I'm reluctant to change it because I don't know if this is going to be a test year or if this is just how it's permanently going to be. If the commission wants me to draft something, I certainly can. It won't be hard, but I just would look for some direction. My thought was that we have to allow it now, and if they decide to change it next session, because they get a lot of complaints, that we wouldn't change anything until we see that it's more permanent.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay, any further comments from our commissioners? Anything else?
Mayor, I'd like just to say it's been a pleasure working with you, Vice Mayor. And also, I wish everyone a very happy holiday. Be safe out there.
Beverly, I apologize. I almost missed you tonight. Good thing you speak up. All right, and thank you for all you do with our minutes and everything. All right, and thank you to everybody, all our staff. And happy holidays to everybody. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Want to stay here all night? Okay, hearing none, the meeting is adjourned.
Bonnie will be in touch with you. Bonnie will be in touch with you.
Okay, because I read the stuff that it requires a financial disclosure stuff, so Beverly was going to mail some.
Beverly will send you that.
Yeah,